just want to make sure we had everybody on board that we should.
Yeah.
And I should have thought, in my excitement, I just did my usual COVID dress, which is going to meetings in a t-shirt this morning. But I should have worn a collar, you know.
Oh, I think you're fine.
It's a clean t-shirt. All right. Well, in that case, we're.
In my excitement, I just. Is that you, George?
Corinne's on now too, by the way.
Okay. Okay.
So, all right. Well, with that, let's kick off our morning meeting of Tuesday, September 29th, 2020, Board of County Commissioners, Clear Creek County, with a call for public comment. Do we have any public comment this morning? And George, are you monitoring Facebook yet? I know I always ask you because you usually do.
Yeah, I am, and that was why you heard your voice, because I didn't have the volume down on my phone when I got in there.
Seeing no and hearing no public comment, Keith, I'll kick it over to you for the public comment, or excuse me, for your county
manager update. Thank you, board. Appreciate everyone being here. To kick things off this morning, I just wanted to indicate that we've got some great news coming out of Henderson relative to our collaborative care clinic. And I'm going to turn it over to Randy to make an announcement relative to Henderson and the clinic.
Yeah, and I'll kick it off, and the other commissioners can also kick in too and fill in the details. Basically, something that we've has been very important to us, and throughout the process, Freeport, McMorran, and Henderson have been great partners for this clinic and encouraging to us. And they, without their leadership and guidance, it would be difficult to imagine that we could have gotten here, and without the knowledge that they were there to help us out. And I know the mine and its people have been a huge part of the history of this county for a long time. It was one of my early jobs when I first got here. Tremendous operation. URAD was still operating at the time in its closing days, and Henderson was kicking up. Right now they've decided, we know they wanted at some point to make a real keystone contribution to our county and leave a legacy. So they've announced today that officially that they're contributing $500,000 towards the construction of our collaborative care clinic. And I can't tell you how excited and how meaningful this is to us. It's really a tremendous thing, and it cements their legacy here. I'm quite moved by the whole thing. It's really a tremendous shot in the arm, and it helps us know, we know this thing is real, 100% real, and we know it's going. And they will, and by doing that, they are changing the lives of generations of people of Clear Creek County in the future through healthcare. And they have changed it for generations already through their economic contributions, and now they are contributing with this contribution to the health of the people of Clear Creek County for a long, long, long time to come. And if either of my other two commissioners, or not my commissioners, fellow commissioners, want to kick in, please feel free.
I just wanted to echo what Randy's saying and send a special heartfelt thank you to the leadership over at Henderson specifically. I mean, we're in unusual times. It's a very unusual time for their foundation, and they're committed to supporting COVID relief and a variety of other things. And as a result, it turned into something that was a lot more time consuming than any of us thought it would be. And, we've been talking about this specifically for more than 6 months. And I would like to especially thank Aretha Christian, who was relatively new in her role when this conversation started, but she really shepherded this through the process and showed a lot of perseverance and commitment to the county. And her efforts are certainly noticed by all of us. And also a little bit of another shout out to our consultant, Rob. Rob Pike is a real pro, and he was extremely helpful in shepherding this through the process too. So thank you so much.
Yeah, well said, Randy and Sean. It's a really great morning to be a Clear Creek County Commissioner, right? A lot of times we are dealing with problems that were problems yesterday, and we don't get a lot of time to think about how we can make tomorrow better. We're doing that today with the help of Henderson, and it's incredible. I want to also mention Tara Hosick, who also, we were talking about this when Tara was on staff at the Henderson mine, and she guided us through this as well. Tara, we all know, just like everybody else at the Henderson, has a lot invested in this community and saw a lot in this project, because Henderson knows, and they do philanthropy and economic development in every community they operate in, and they know what this will mean to our community. So this is just another feather in the cap and another solid step in the direction towards getting this done. I also want to mention someone who's on screen here, which is Cindy Dickin. Cindy, this has been your vision and your battle, and we've been working on this since we lost our clinic almost 10 years ago. And we're on the verge, we're on the precipice of this thing. Hopefully this is our snowball moment, our 100th monkey moment here. So just thanks to everybody. I'm really excited to keep moving forward, and very, very grateful to Freeport McMoran and the Henderson Mine for doing this.
Thanks, George.
I think it's worthwhile to mention a few of the ways that this can help our county and individual people in the county. The one thing that's been real apparent, you don't think about it because most of us are have the resources and time, many of us, I would say, to be able to head for Evergreen or head down to Golden, and every once in a while when you need to do that, to find a doctor somewhere and you're not sure if you're emergent or not and need to go to an emergency room or hospital, it's helpful to have a clinic. And we've seen our CHAPS assessment, which is a Colorado Health assessment, show that over 10 years now that we've been without a fully active clinic, our health levels in the county have fallen. And a lot of that is because people just end up not going and taking their chances with it. And I can think of a couple times that I personally have been, riding my bicycle too fast or turning a corner too fast on it or something, and bent over the handlebars and not really known what was supposed to happen next, and ended up, because of the injury, not even be able to see a doctor locally, or I was able to see a doctor locally, excuse me. And I can't think about if I were going through that period of time over the last 10 years in my youth, doing that and having no choice but to call an ambulance because I was unsure of the injury that I had. And another example is the fact that this clinic is going to be right across the street from one of our one of our living centers, our senior centers here in Clear Creek County. And it gives all those folks, some of whom don't have the same mobility that the rest of us have, the opportunity to literally walk across the street and find their doctor during that time of their life when they need it the most. And both of those stories kind of resonate for me, being an old guy who used to ride a bicycle and crash it a lot. But it's a huge difference for all of our community.
Well, thank you, Randy. Thank you, board and Cindy. This is, as someone had said, this is a great day here in Clear Creek County. A $500,000 contribution from Henderson. That is certainly going to help close that funding gap. And we look forward to working with other community members for contributions as well. But this puts us well on the way, in addition to the other grants that we've received from DOLA, Colorado Health Foundation, and others. But this is a big deal. So Henderson, thank you so much. We will be putting what's called a grant agreement on the board agenda in the upcoming weeks, or on the upcoming schedule for the board, and we'll make it official with that grant agreement. But this certainly is good news today. So without further ado, I'll continue on with my manager update. And I notice Alyssa is on the call, on the line, and she's going to give us a quick update on what's happening with COVID recovery efforts. Alyssa?
Hi everyone, Alyssa Denberg. So I have a couple updates for you. So I'm going to start with the business grant because I know we have a lot of questions about that. Our original intent was to get money out to businesses by the end of September. Unfortunately, we have some unforeseen complications, so we really are doing everything that we possibly can to get that money out as soon as possible. We expect to move forward with the review process in the next week or two. But we really are doing everything we can. If you have any questions or if you applied for a grant, feel free to reach out to me. Just because you haven't heard doesn't mean that you didn't get money. We have not notified anybody yet. So that is the update on the business grant. I heard from our DOLA rep about 2 weeks ago that we are expecting additional CARES money. And so what that means is that the state has freed up their reserves for governments to be able to apply for additional money. So it's going to be in a 2-phase process. The first phase is going to be for anyone that did not get CARES money in the first round. So special districts or local governments that did not receive funding will be able to apply during this round. So we don't qualify for that one because we did receive funding. But there is going to be a second round where anybody that received funding previously is able to apply. And so we are eligible for that one, and we do plan on applying for it. What our DOLA rep has told me is that they're really looking for compelling grants. And he really is pushing us to try to use the money to support businesses during the winter. And so we are actively working with businesses to put together a really competitive collaborative grant that's going to help businesses get through the winter. So if you have any ideas, we are accepting innovative ideas for restaurants to be able to operate outside or to just be successful during the winter. Please send me a message. We are definitely looking for innovative ideas. No ideas too crazy. Let's see. So we have a draft of strategic objectives for our Clear Creek Resiliency Collaborative. This group used to be called the Policy Group. It is now called the Clear Creek Resiliency Collaborative. And this group is made up of mayors and town managers and representatives from the special districts, all in the county. We meet weekly, and the group is brought together to make sure that everyone is on the same page and attacking COVID in the same way.
And county commissioners.
And county commissioner, yes, I forgot about the county, but yes, we have county commissioners, we have the county manager. So all the big decision makers in the county sit on this committee. And so for the past couple of weeks, the group has been going through an iterative process, doing some empathy interviews and really trying to figure out what some of the challenges in the county are. And we are really excited that our next meeting, which is tomorrow, we're going to be presenting the draft of our strategic objectives. I believe we have 5 objectives, and as soon as these are reviewed by the committee, we will present them at this group too. But we're really excited about it. The group has made a lot of really good headway on figuring out what the challenges are and how we're going to attack them. And I think my last update for you, and I think that we have a lot of people that are wondering this, the county received about $815,000 from CARES money. Some of this money has already been spent on expenses that the county and the towns had to put out just to keep the county safe, so PPE. But we do have some money that we're going to use to try to support everyone in the county. So some ideas that have been brought to the table are a small business winter toolkit. And so the focus of this is direct support for small businesses during the colder months. And what we're looking at doing is providing businesses with a gallon of hand sanitizer, a pack or 2 of face masks, and then some resources on how to keep not only employees, but customers safe during the cold months. We know that people are going to be less likely to sit outside, and so we want to make sure that restaurants feel prepared and that we can keep people open. And so really that's the main focus of this, is keep our businesses open during the winter so that they can continue to survive. So that is one thing that we're looking at doing with CARES. Another thing that we're looking at doing is a mental health evaluation. So what this would do is really evaluate our mental and behavioral health options in the county. Where are the gaps? Where are we doing really well? And how can we continue and improve the services that we're providing to residents? We would be looking at working with another agency to do this. We've talked to one. We're looking at trying to get some quotes from other ones to make sure that we're getting a good deal, but really trying to get a comprehensive evaluation of mental health in the county. And our last idea that we had is a low contact business promotion. And so this is again to try to help businesses survive those cold winter months where people can't necessarily sit outside. And so this would be in partnership with the Tourism Bureau. And we're bouncing around a couple ideas, but one of the main focuses behind this is to push people to get takeout. And so push our local residents, but also push people that are coming to visit Idaho Springs and Georgetown and Empire and Silver Plume to get takeout versus continuing to drive on to where they're going down I-70. So really, really encouraging people to stop, grab a burrito on your way to the ski slopes, grab dinner on your way back from the ski slopes. And so, yeah, we're looking at doing that, and that is in partnership with the Tourism Bureau. So I think those are the only updates that I have. What questions do you have for me?
What have you been doing lately?
Not much. Not a whole lot.
No, that's great, Alyssa. Thank you so much. Alyssa's spearheading a lot of different approaches and efforts relative to recovery, and it's very much appreciated by us here at the county as well as other community members. So thanks for everything that you're doing, and thanks to all the participants in the recovery group and the business loan or business grant program, et cetera, et cetera.
There is one thing that I did not mention that I think is a really cool opportunity that you all might be interested in. So in partnership with the school district, we're going to be doing some interviews with students to see what the impact of COVID has been on their lives, and just try to understand what their life is like during COVID and maybe how they would have done some things differently. And so I am starting with, I don't remember what grade, but a civics class in high school. We were supposed to do it today, but unfortunately, due to remote learning, there have been some challenges with that. But we are looking at rescheduling that. And so any teachers that are listening to this, I encourage you to reach out. We definitely want to talk to your kids and just see how they're feeling, see what needs they have, and what ideas they have.
That's really
Great
great.
idea.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Yeah.
I had a quick, well, first off, thank you for the update. And you guys know I always bring up aging and mental health whenever we talk about CARES dollars. And I think it sounds like we're talking about finding out a little bit more about what our status is. What about actually taking some of our CARE dollars and deploying them to solutions too? I mean, we only have now just over 3 months left before the end of the year. So my assumption is that's kind of why we're doing this, to set the table, to be able to deploy some dollars. And maybe it sounds like dollars from round 2 of whatever the CARES funding looks like. So just wanted to confirm that that's kind of where we're headed.
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked, because obviously we want to get to a solution to try to help, but without fully understanding what the full problem is, we want to make sure that we really understand it, and bringing in a third-party company to help us get our arms around everything and make sure that we fully understand it, I think, before we're able to jump to solutions. It is my goal that based on the assessment that we get back, we'll be able to use data from that to apply for additional grants. So yes, we want to use CARES money for solutions, but using CARES money, I'm gonna quote George on this, and I'm probably gonna mess it up. Using CARES, I don't even know what you said, using CARES money to fund 2021 or something like that. We want to make sure that we're using that CARES money to leverage everything that we can. And I feel pretty confident that the information that we get from an assessment would help us in writing grants, because I could write grants right now, but I don't really know what the problems are. I know we have a mental health issue. I know that we're not being covered completely, but I don't have the data to back that up. And so
Yeah,
I
I
want to
mean-
make sure that I have the data.
I mean, don't take this with a grain of salt, but my suspicion is our problems are very similar to Gilpin's problems and Summit's and Jefferson's and everyone else's.
Right.
So I don't think it's a bad idea to do this, but I think there's probably the opportunity to look around the wide world in the state of Colorado and see what some of our neighbors are doing and maybe get a little bit of a leg up so that, you know, we don't get this data dump back from a consultant on December 1st and we have no more runway to make stuff happen. So I think probably doing both of those at the same time in my mind might make sense.
Okay.
Yeah, and Sean, I'm all ears, and I really appreciate your comments. I know I've reached out to the mental health care providers in our community to say, you know, is there something we can do? Can we contract a service? Like, do you guys have ideas? And I haven't come across anything that's like easily deployable and then finishable by December and all of that. Not for lack of effort. But that said, I know you're on the board of JCMH, and I know you're on our area agency on aging. So I welcome your ideas, and if we can find a way to serve folks in the same time, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and I'll reach out to both of those organizations this week and circle back with you, Alyssa, on whatever I figure out or her.
And I think we're all supportive of that general concept, and I appreciate Sean bringing it up and George's efforts to get it done. I know it may be that their bandwidth is pretty full right now, and ironically, that could be partially because of COVID, and in terms of trying to come up with new ideas in addition to the stuff they're already chasing as hard as they can. But I think it's still great to take another shot at it, Sean, and through your connections there, and see if we can come up with an idea that is would be really beneficial. I can't imagine that as the winter goes on, we won't set a precedent for ways to deal with the obvious. So
yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've heard has already happened is by necessity, places like JCMH have moved to more of a remote delivery model of their counseling services, and they have found in some cases that the patients actually prefer that. It solves transportation issues, it solves issues of privacy and convenience, and some people just prefer to interact through their phone rather than having to show up, and especially in these days. So I think that might be something, because it's not obvious to me that all of our community knows that that's available to them and that that's a service that they can use. And so it may be just we spend some money on better advertising and socializing the solutions that we already have.
Thanks for your comment, Sean. Thank you, Alyssa. Was there anything else, Alyssa?
I don't think so. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any ideas or questions. Always available to chat.
Yeah, we've got your phone number. We've got your email for sure.
thanks a million, Alyssa. Great work.
Thank you. The next item I wanted to cover actually is coming from Cindy, and it has to do with child support enforcement. And I think we may have talked about this a couple, 2-3 weeks ago, but we wanted to follow up today. Cindy's got a little more detail. I did attach to my manager report that I sent to you a memo that Cindy had put together with a lot of details. But Cindy, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Great, thanks, Keith. So Clear Creek and Gilpin have continued to talk and work with the State Department about child support enforcement and the two counties sharing a position. I think I indicated to you maybe when we talked about the budget that this was this was coming, and it feels like it is roaring down the pike at this point in time. We have a job description that the State Department approved, and I have submitted to Kate. She is holding on to it. We can't post the job description until I have verbal approval from the Board of County Commissioners to do so. We are going to house this person who is doing child support enforcement for Clear Creek and Gilpin will be housed in Georgetown, downstairs in the Human Services offices. It seems to be the most logical place, since Gilpin doesn't have room for the person at this point in time. That person needs to be close to child protection, but also needs to have a link to TANF. Both of those entities look at child support services if they are involved, if children are involved or are part of a family where there is a divorce and those orders have been issued. So we, the Gilpin County attorneys for child welfare have offered to be the attorneys of record for the cases for Clear Creek and Gilpin. And we hoping we have identified a person who will do backup training so that the person that we hire for this position, we don't have a single point of failure with one person. Actually, it would be great if Gilpin County and Clear Creek County had someone that knew about the system and knew how to work the system in case our worker would fall ill or be out of pocket. It is, child support enforcement has been something that Jeffco has done for us for the last 25 years. And because they have done child support for us, we have not been as involved. We are getting big time involved in reading volume 6, all about 4D, and the ins and outs, the intricacies of this program is, it's almost as overwhelming as child welfare. Anyway, I told Keith I basically need a verbal approval from the board to be able to post the job description so that we can look for the right candidate to fill the job. We, in conversations with the state, they indicated to us they feel certain someone with experience will apply. We've asked if they know someone that might apply, and they said let's do this a step at a time. I'm asking for your permission to post this job description and to be able to work with Kate and again with Gilpin and the state as we refine some of the language that was previously submitted.
Cindy, could
That's
you maybe,
a huge.
Cindy, could you possibly just cover ballpark anyway, what the budget ramifications would be relative to this position and what you foresee as far as sharing the position with Gilpin and ensuring that we have an equitable arrangement between Clear Creek and Gilpin?
Absolutely. Clear Creek currently has between 165, 175 open cases for child support enforcement. Gilpin counties is less than 100. There are, the size, of course, is a big factor there. Gilpin County, though, had said they would pay 50%. We are going to split the cost of this person, salary, whatever kind of equipment needs to be provided for this person, everything will be split 50-50. Gilpin had offered initially to house the person. They are moving into they were supposed to move into their new building in October, and that's not going to happen. They've been pushed back till January, but they are willing to send one of their staff to be one of the backup people for this position. And it's a person that has been there for a long time and has done work with child support enforcement through the Department of Human Services. So we want to be able to continue to work together as we review the applications and as we talk about workload and all of the other nuances of this program. In the past, when Jefferson County has done child support for us, the counties, Clear Creek and Gilpin, have not paid. Jefferson County has retained all the incentives that are earned through the federal government for being successful with child support. And I think I included that number on the memo that I sent, how much was earned. Jeffco, the state, and another partner of ours, Park County. Susie Walton is the director there. And Laura and I have known Susie for years. And she said once Park County took over child support enforcement, the incentives that they earned went high, much higher than they were when another county was responsible. And so I'm hopeful, Laura and I are both hopeful that the incentives going up will help support the cost of the program. We put in $50,000 per county to cover the cost this first year. I think since we sent that information to you, we have determined that Clear Creek County is an option 2 county, and that means the state will supply all of the computer needs for a human services position. I'm unclear as to what is going to happen as far as the information that this person works with through the IRS. And so once we get a little bit farther down the road, we will figure that out as well. That's really, besides picking up volume 6 and starting to read that manual, we just need to get started and figure out who this person is going to be for us, so we can either get them trained or please have someone who is trained and we can afford a salary that is commensurate with their experience to get that person on board.
So it sounds like, Cindy, what you're requesting is just a verbal approval from the board at this point in time to move forward?
Yes, yes. That's all we need today.
I guess maybe a little bit of a process question. Maybe I missed it, but I don't think I received any memo or any sort of background information about this. So I'm coming into this like completely flat-footed.
Yeah, my apology. I did attach a memo to an email I sent out to the board yesterday with the manager update. There was a memo attached to that.
Commissioner, I would be happy to sit with you or any of you beyond this meeting and talk about the responsibilities and what this means for the county. But we are kind of in a difficult position. We have to do this work, and we have to have somebody, we have to hire somebody to do this work. So 25 years is a long time not to think about child support enforcement. And we definitely have to think.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Cindy, when did we receive that notice from Jeffco?
We started talking about this last year, and there was an opportunity at first for us to revisit, and that opportunity kind of went away. Jeffco is saying, even if we paid the entire cost for that position, no, they want our counties to take this over. So we've been in conversations with the state and Jeffco for a while, but now we are, yes, this is not going anywhere, but we have to provide this service through the counties in order to get this done, and it won't be through Jeffco. And so
my question, and I see that we've got some months to work on it, but but my question was, so Jeffco just recently came to this final determination that they're no longer going to.
About 2 months ago, when we were in conversations with Jeffco and the state, and we made our final appeal and said, you know, we don't feel like we're prepared to do this. We've not done this locally. And if we, through county admin or whatever, finished and paid the salary for the person that you've employed in order to take care of these 2 counties, and they just said no. So that's when we started working on a job description and talking about attorneys that can represent those cases in court. And yeah, so the state keeps telling us not to worry, that there is going to be an experienced person that will apply. And sorry, show me. I'm worried about this a little bit.
So can I ask you, Cindy, and thank you for the memo here. In it, I see a couple things. One, I see that we're going to office the child support enforcement specialists. And then I also see that Clear Creek and Gilpin will split all of the costs to administer the program.
Right.
Is the cost of that office space being included in those negotiations?
We both, when we talked to the state, we agreed to, it would be about $50,000 per county. And that would account for salary, it would account for equipment, and it would account for office space if office space was going to be charged back. Yes, for that person's office. I don't know whether Gilpin is charging for their new building. I have no idea. Laura didn't tell me that. But because the majority of our cases, belong to Clear Creek, and the court is right upstairs, that seemed logical for us. And also they sit in the same group of offices that human services caseworkers are in. And that is another big connection for us. Child support, when we are talking about fees and services for child welfare. So, yes.
George, you bring up a good question. That's why I think I mentioned a few minutes ago, as we move forward and come to terms, if we move forward and come to terms with Gilpin County, I think we have to make sure it's an equitable arrangement. And if we are providing the office space, I think that needs to be taken into consideration as far as how the cost is split.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with moving forward. Obviously, we need to post the position to, start to take steps here. I think we will still have room to kind of negotiate the cost share and all of that. It's pretty clear in my mind that each of us hiring our own staff person is not the optimal solution. And so I'm comfortable moving forward, but I would like to request a breakdown, a more numerical than narrative breakdown of what these costs are going to be. I know we have the child support enforcement specialists, but there's some reference to benefit coordinators, and I don't know if those are new positions or not. So if we could just get a kind of a robust numerical breakdown of what this looks like, that'd be great.
And maybe a comparative one that shows us what was and what must be, so we can compare the two and just kind of understand what just happened. So, from a fiscal standpoint.
Right.
Yeah, and I understand everybody's busy, but just from a process perspective, I always kind of naturally push back on things when, I get a document called document the day before and no reference of it, and this sort of feeling of urgency, like we got to go take action on this. I mean, I really strongly prefer to be able to read everything in full and have a chance to even reach out to you privately, Cindy, or whomever, to make sure, rather than have this sort of thing kind of dropped out of the sky. So, I mean, I agree with Randy and George. It sounds like this is something that we have to do, but I don't think this is the right way to make big decisions. Well, even this type of a decision going forward.
Certainly, Commissioner, and if you want to give me a call, we can talk about it. We can schedule another meeting. I think our sense of urgency is just about whether or not we're going to be able to hire someone to come and do this job. Now, again, the State Department is saying this is not going to be an issue. There are going to be a lot of people that are going to apply. People that are going to apply are going to have the experience, and so we won't necessarily need those dollars to pay for training. And I get the idea every time we have this conversation that the state knows a few people that are eager to apply. Now, that and I guess $2.25 will get you a cup of Starbucks coffee. So I'm skeptical, but I'm also, this is a huge undertaking for these two departments, for these two counties, something that we've never had to deal with. And it is, yeah, we've got to, and we do have the commitment from the state that they will be with us every step of the way.
My
That and
concern is
coffee.
more one of the budget impacts. I mean, what was it, a week or two? We basically, as a group, went through the Health and Human Services budget on a line-by-line basis, and nobody said anything about this. And it sounds like this was something that was already well in the works. And, you know, that would have been a great time to give us a little bit of a heads up, because I mean, we're looking closely at everyone's budget. And when you mentioned that there's going to be the opportunity for more reimbursement, to George's point, I'd like to know better, what does that look like, right? Is this going to cost us $49,000 out of our budget, out of the general fund, or is there going to be some other offset somewhere else in Health and Human Services, or is this going to be $5,000 or $10,000? I mean, that's the type of info that I appreciate.
Of course, and when we did our budget overview, I do recall mentioning that this was in the works, but we didn't know at that point in time just exactly how much money we were going to request. And Commissioner, I don't think there's any way in the world we're going to need $100,000 between the two counties in order to implement this program. Like I said, one of the biggest cost factors was going to be training as well as equipment. And we don't have the information back from the IRS about their input and their equipment, those kinds of things. But we also have the ability, we underspent regular admin last year, and we have the ability, Clear Creek County underspent regular admin, and we have the ability to charge off some of the salary through that category. But I would be happy to talk to you about the particulars. I'm happy to do that.
You know, I'm thinking a couple different options might be, Cindy, if we need kind of a head nod to go ahead and advertise for the position, we could possibly go ahead and do that. That's not making any kind of commitment as to whether we hire someone or not. The other thing I'm hearing is the board would like some additional information, so we could just give it a little bit of time for additional research and more information to be presented to the board. So we could just put this on an upcoming board agenda for further consideration, or a combination of both.
Right. Well, and the other thing that I suggested in Gilpin County was perhaps the commissioners can meet jointly, and we could have someone from the state Child Support Enforcement Office that might be able to answer some technical questions that you might have, especially regarding funding.
I don't know that I mean, we got a lot going on. I don't know that we need to belabor this. I just would like to see, you know, some reporting so that I can be well informed about our picture moving forward.
I think, yeah. Sorry, interrupting you, George.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, so I don't know that we need to like call for a work session. I think it could show up in a manager's report or something like that. Sean, Randy, if you guys want to spend time talking about it here, I'm happy to indulge that as well.
It sounds like something that I tend to agree with what Sean said, which is if we've known this is coming for a couple of years and we've known it was going to be hitting for a couple of months, it would have been, you know, nice to have it out there. I'm not finding fault with the situation having arisen with anyone on our staff or here, but it would have been nice to know. And so I mean, I'm okay with the description of what the solution should be that's the most likely, but I too would like to see the fiscal impact of the change, and in some form other than a narrative, or it probably won't cost $100,000 or something, is not quite as specific as I'd, you know, hope for. Just we see something that's that says, well, here's where we were and here's where we are. And it could be in just a simple, I can't imagine taking over a half page on a spread on a half page spreadsheet to, in large print to explain that to me in a way that I can understand it. And I don't know that we need to schedule it. I think after we look at that, we can schedule a meeting or not when we look at it. So if someone can throw that together, I'd be satisfied.
Yeah, and I agree with both George and Randy. One of the things I would like to bring back up, I don't remember talking about this in our budget meeting, but one of the things I do remember talking about in our budget meeting was some sort of a follow-on work session just to allow all three of us to be more informed about the workings of Health and Human Services and the different funding sources and essentially where the levers were. So I know there's a lot of regulations and there's a lot of things that we have to provide from a statutory perspective. And what we were talking about is where the dials or the levers where if push comes to shove and we need to change the budget by a certain amount, I at this point, I don't even know how we can do that because I'm just not well enough informed about how it all works. So that's something that I would like Keith and Cindy you guys to push toward the top of your review to get that scheduled sometime. And it's not something I don't think we're gonna do for this budget cycle, but I think it's really important. And I feel like I'm not really perfectly armed to do my job like I should, just because I lack that knowledge.
Yeah, and I think we actually had that scheduled once, and I'm pretty sure that yours truly had a conflict and had to pull off of it. And so I agree. Moving forward with that would allow us to understand more innately what's going on when you bring it up to us too. Cindy, you have one of the most complicated jobs in the county government, if not the most, maybe a couple of the most, and so it's hard for us to see into it just because of that complexity. It's a lot to wrap your head around. We have 13 minutes left on manager update, and we're already up to number 3 out of 75 items. So perhaps we can, if we're done with that, Cindy, did you have anything else on that, or?
I just need you to, if you feel comfortable, if you don't feel comfortable, we won't move forward, but at some point in time, quickly, I need to post this job. And so I'm happy to put some more information together that will give you as much as you need to feel good about this. It is complicated. There's no way we can cover all of these things in 15 or 20 minutes. It is very, very complicated. And the work that this person does with the courts is just another piece of the complication. So
I'm okay with it, with the understanding that the information that we give will,
yes,
something could change. Let's get it out there in the interest of timeliness. And then we can make the final decision on the hire once we have all the information and understand it a little better. And I have pretty good confidence that you've, found the right solution to it. So move forward with it, and then we'll revisit it after we receive that information. And the sooner we receive the information, the sooner we can put our gold star on it. So.
Yeah, that's good. I asked the state, what do we do if we don't have anybody that applies? Is the state going to take this over? And they said, absolutely, positively not. So I guess, well, there's other things, but I will, with your permission, commissioners, I will get this job description posted. Gilpin is ready to post as well. And with, letting this person know that they'd be working in Georgetown. And we are requesting that people that have experience, please apply. Yes. Thank you.
Just a couple of final comments.
Yeah.
My apologies. Something you just said, Cindy, and I don't need a response here, but I'm a little surprised to hear that Gilpin is going to post this job as well, because usually they would be reportable to one person. But you guys, I trust you to navigate that. And then I just wanted to point out that we did have scheduled for September 15th, talking about the biggest fluctuating piece of your budget, which is trying to understand
Families
Family
first.
First
Yes.
and how that's impacting our budget. And Sean, I'll agree with you. It'd be great to spend a half hour or an hour just understanding the general structure of their budget. And Cindy, I leave it to you if you would prefer to do that before we dig into Family First or not. I just want to have dug into Family First like in October.
Sure, and we were going to do that today. We asked to postpone. Today I am trying to get the Better grant in the mail or emailed, and so I'm a little bit. We had some documents that were not fleshing out correctly, so it's ready to go, and we can put that if you have room on your agenda for next week. I'm happy to pull those two things together, and we can kind of start a primary conversation about Families First, because they are intertwined as far as our budget is concerned, prevention pieces and how that's going to work. So if that would work for you all, that's great.
Okay.
Start with round one, I guess.
So I think Randy was correct. We've got a number of other items, although I think the priority item out of all the rest would be the clinic groundbreaking. And I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page and you're receiving relevant information on the clinic groundbreaking ceremony. I believe it's scheduled for October 16th.
16th.
Yeah, thank you. And once again, Cindy, is there any information you need to or would like to share with the board?
I sent you and Beth a copy of a spreadsheet that the videographer would like for the commissioners to use, just with names and contact information for people they want videoed. The other piece of what's happening is I've been in contact with Jim Pasula and Dana Tallarico, who is they definitely want Kevin Jenkins to be videoed. And so I did reach out to him yesterday, and he was probably there, but Margot was not. So we're going to take care of several things today that will be part of groundbreaking. But basically, the videographer is waiting for people that the commissioners definitely want to have there.
And I did forward that spreadsheet onto the board yesterday for the board to look at and to contribute or add names that they would like to have participate in the groundbreaking.
Right.
Is there anything else, Cindy, on groundbreaking?
No, this has been kind of hour by hour with this videographer, and he is definitely going to be there the day of the 16th. And if you have people there then, or if there are people you would like to have videotaped prior to, so they could be kind of in a controlled setting, just please get that list filled out and make sure that you note on the list video prior to the 16th.
So take a look at that spreadsheet that the videographer put together, and if you have information to add to that spreadsheet, please do so, and or let Cindy know so that she can add to the spreadsheet.
Right.
Real quick, the rest of these items, relatively quick. Budget preparation, as we've already talked, we're in the midst of preparing our 2021 budget. We've been having some good meetings. The commissioners have been involved in the discussions. We anticipate having the draft budget put together by the end of October. I know Brent and I have been meeting separately with pretty much all the division directors and filling in the 2021 numbers. So I think we're pretty close to getting a final budget prepared. And then, as you all know, the final budget will be adopted or approved in December. So moving forward with budget. Also wanted to let you know, again, I think some great news. Our benefit package, we've been working with and talking with our benefit consultant, and their name is Lockton. They've been doing a great job in negotiating with our healthcare providers, Cigna being our main provider. And I know Kate's going to provide you all a presentation on next week's agenda, but just wanted to let you know that things are looking really good as far as holding the line on costs relative to healthcare benefits. So that's good news. And again, Kate will give you the details next week, but just wanted to give you a little precursor on that. Another announcement that I'd like to make, as you all know, our very esteemed and longtime attorney, Bob Loeffler, is retiring at the end of this year. And we are actually in the process of advertising, recruiting for that position. And the job description is online. I saw it on the county website yesterday. In talking with Bob, I believe he's going to be sending out, or Kate will be sending out, a listserv to all the attorney offices, county attorney offices in the state. Again, starting that recruiting process. This is a position that we really need to recruit. We just can't rely on advertising. I think we have to go out and do some serious recruiting for the position. But it's going to be difficult to replace someone like Bob with his longevity, his experience, his, I think, as I said in my memo, his warehouse of knowledge. We're going to miss Bob, but I have his phone number. I have his personal number. So we'll be in touch with Bob. But anyway, we wanted to get serious about the recruiting process for a county attorney.
I assume that we'll be spending some time to help him clean out his warehouse and move it over to our storage shed.
Yeah, we'll probably need to engage Road and Bridge with some of their large belly dump trucks or dump trucks to help him.
Hey, and tell him happy birthday. It's his birthday this week. This is your last chance to tell him that.
Happy birthday, Bob.
And then
happy birthday, Randy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you
Randy.
too, Bob.
Yeah, Randy's birthday is next week, I believe.
Bob and I are at that age where we're really putting this one off, because before we just entered our 70s and now we're just in our 70s. You know, we're just cruising toward, we go on cruise control towards 80. So
happy birthday, guys. Bob, congratulations on your announcement of retirement. It's not going to be the same without you, Bob. But anyway, just a real quick message that we received a letter from the Grand Foundation this week thanking us for participating in the rental and mortgage assistance program to the tune of $31,000 that Clear Creek County contributed to that. So it was a thank you letter from the Grand Foundation. A couple real quick items. I was wondering what the board's thoughts would be if we reduce the frequency of COVID updates. I know we've been going every week for essentially 6 months on COVID updates. And I'm just wondering if the board would consider doing twice a month COVID updates. I know it's still, an important, obviously a priority for us at the county, but it seems as though that we're starting to hear some redundant information and redundant discussions. But is there any sense or any thoughts from the board on doing COVID twice a month rather than every week?
I see it's in keeping with the next and last item on your list.
Yes.
I think, there is another one that appears on the next page, but which is to go to 2 meetings a month plus the third, plus whenever we have a 5th meeting, a work session, I think,
Work
or
session,
last Tuesday of every month is a work
Yeah.
session in general. I mean, we've gotten, we cover a lot of ground in these Zoom meetings. And so I think that, and they generally were out by early afternoon. I think my guess is we'll still continue to cover the same amount of ground. And so we wouldn't be able to count on those afternoons to get back to work on other things. Most likely I'm guessing we'd be pretty full up. I'm okay with the idea, with the understanding that we're going to have to commit the day.
Yeah.
Probably to get things done.
Yeah. So you're talking both, Randy, of COVID updates and the commissioner meeting schedule.
Well, the two go hand in hand.
Yeah, they
You know,
do.
if we go to every other Tuesday, it's going to be pretty hard to have them every week. You know, the updates. So
Right.
it's
Yeah, well, the update doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with the board meeting, right? And what I mean by that is if there's some sort of a reason to have one on the second Tuesday or second Monday or whatever, as long as it's properly noticed, and you know, we can always schedule one if we need to.
So, I mean, I have some concerns with both ideas. We've did a bunch of empathy interviews on the Resiliency Collaborative. One of the very common themes was that people don't feel like they are having enough information. I think that, you know, people, myself included, tend to be a little bit creatures of habit. And so I think if we move this to every other week, and it's not something that they can rely on every Tuesday morning, the attention we receive, well, not we, but this valuable information receives will be reduced. So that's the COVID update. And I have no intention of insisting, but that's sort of where I'm starting out, and open to hearing particularly the thoughts of Tim Ryan. As far as meeting every other week as a board, I don't like that idea. I just don't. This is staring at this screen for the 8 to 10 hours that we used to sit in the room together is not something I look forward to. And I'll speak for myself because it's not my position to evaluate you all, but I think I'm a lot better county commissioner in a public meeting in the first 4, 5, 6 hours of a public meeting, and definitely much worse after that, right? There's definitely I think as a group, we kind of fall off a cliff and don't tend to perform very well at 4 and 5 o'clock when we've been here since 9. So I would ask this board that, if we want to manage, if we think we're meeting for too much time, let's meet shorter, but let's still meet once a week. And I think I'll stop speaking now.
Yeah, and I agree with the spirit of what you're saying, George. One thing I'll note, I looked at the attendee list right now. There's 16 people. I think 11 or 12 of them are staff and 4 of them are members of the public. So I think in terms of people having the opportunity to be heard, people know, and I haven't looked to see what's on Facebook. I think the other thing too is I think we have the opportunity to be a little bit more efficient with the time. I mean, we basically, if we put an hour on the schedule and tell someone to show up, they're going to fill up the hour one way or the other, whether it's actually the best use of staff's and everyone's time. And I think we don't need to make a black and white hard decision. One of the things that is going on coincidentally, I did get appointed by Governor Polis to the new Colorado Secure Savings Program Board. And our first meeting is Tuesday, the 13th, or whenever that second Tuesday of October is. And that's the only time that worked for everyone. And I told them in general, Tuesdays don't work well for me. So maybe coincidentally, maybe it would match my own personal conflict if we perhaps tried not meeting on the second Tuesday for the rest of the year and met the other ones just to see how it goes. Because I'm totally sympathetic, George, to your concern. I don't like going past 3 or 4 o'clock either. And the few times that we went to 6 or 7, you're completely right. And I think it would be even worse to be looking at a computer for whatever that would be, 10 hours. But I do think we have the opportunity to look at the agenda a little harder and be a little bit more efficient about it and time box some of our conversations and still be able to get out of here by 2 or 3 and only have 2 or 3 meetings a month instead of 4 or 5.
I think I can go either way, but I consider my personal reaction to it initially was I don't have a problem with meeting every Tuesday. And as creatures of habit, both people that come in and ourselves, we know what to plan for. There's also the issue, though, of if our staff is preparing for meetings every week, there's productivity down of one sort, although it may be helping another sort also because it's, everybody's in the game and we're getting a lot of things rolling. But finally, then I think that I tend to agree with George too on the I know that these meetings are actually a lot harder on my back and my legs and everything than it is to meet in person in the meetings we have that were all day meetings. And even though we're sitting behind the board, we get up and move around a lot more. And these things can be, because these can be very grueling, long days when we do 8 or so hours here. And I agree that the last 2 or 3 hours, it's hard to keep from killing your video, for a little bit and taking it easier and running out. And so I think that, I mean, I'm okay if we start out. My guess is I think we've done this before and come back to full days again. I mean, every week again, not full days, because we're really able to cover a lot of things. And it could be that with COVID this winter, I kind of tend to agree with George on that too. That especially that, I mean, you didn't mention it being this winter particularly, but the whole issue about mental health and also people feeling secure during this period is likely to be exacerbated this winter. And and it's right. The interviews that we did showed that our population, for the most part, feels a little more secure when they feel more informed and understand what's going on and what's coming. So part of that relates to COVID update. Part of it relates to just understanding what we're doing, because a lot of the work that we do right now is about that subject or in response to that subject. Half the projects we're doing are tied to that one way or another. So I have a little bit of a skepticism that not meeting every week is going to pan out and work well. And we'll find something different we don't like about it, which is being stuck all day long, probably 3 days a month and maybe 4 before we're done. I don't think I went anywhere with this, except it's all right with me if we give it a try. But I also have meetings that come up on Tuesday that I can't make most of the time. And I mean, they're scattered out. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the projects and the stuff I'm working on, and sometimes I have to pick it. And I figure the one that we're doing right now is the one that's our primary responsibility. And but I'm sympathetic to what Sean said. I've got all kinds of NOCO and transportation stuff that pops up every Tuesday that I have to make that choice.
So, I mean, I think if the 13th, Sean, you have a major conflict with the first meeting of something you're doing that you care about, I'm happy to either schedule that meeting around your meeting or just not have it. Maybe we want to think for a week about whether we still do the 11 o'clock COVID update. And, if you're present or not, I think we can still provide a platform for Dr. Ryan, should we decide that we need to maintain that platform.
We could do the COVID update, and with regard to the rest of the meeting, we could sample the idea, see how it works out, doing it for 1 or 2 cycles, and leaving every other Tuesday out, and see how it works out.
I agree with you, Randy. I mean, I know that Keith mentioned when I originally floated the idea, and the original idea was the state has those 11 o'clock DOLA COVID updates, and they used to be twice a week, and then they were once a week, and now they moved into twice a week. And I've heard that's happening in most other organizations and local governments, which is why I thought we should at least talk about it. And Keith said he thought Tim would appreciate that, but I don't, I've never heard that from Tim, and I don't know that anybody has really asked him whether he thinks that's something that's necessary for public health.
I did reach out to Tim, and he's fine going to every other week or twice a month. It's essentially up to, I think, the board as to what your desires are. Staff can accommodate whatever your desires are.
Maybe we have some other staff in our public health department. Like we have a recovery coordinator, we have a consumer protection specialist. Maybe if we want to try to keep a cadence of people knowing that they can, at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, hear about what's going on with COVID in the county. Maybe we just try to bring some more diversity into what we're talking about. I do agree that it's like, oh, we're at 35 cases and now we're at 37, and guess, somebody got a positive, and it's pretty redundant. So maybe that's another way. I really think it's important for us to maintain that regularity.
We could also do a weekly, update on the website or press release or something like that too. Because like I mentioned, it does look like there's only 4 or 5 people on this call right now. And who knows, maybe more will show up at 11, we'll find out.
That's typically what I see, and we'll pay attention. I've got 17 on Facebook right now. And then we can't forget that this is on the radio, and I hear a lot that people log into the radio at 11 o'clock. Well, this isn't on the radio.
So we may have a couple of dozen out there. And that's a significant number in a little county, paying attention. Well, I'm okay if on the 13th we take a pass. I suggest that, and then let's see how it feels. If we do that once or twice, we may come out of that and just say, if we have 2 brutal days either side of it or following it, then we may decide that the current cadence is about right for Zoom. It's not hard to do. We don't have much of a commute.
Okay, so it sounds like the desire, the direction at this point in time anyway, is to take the 13th off. And Beth, I don't know if you've got anything scheduled on the 13th. Okay, good. So let's do that. Let's take the 13th off and just see how it feels, and then go from there.
My preference is that we still do a half hour for 11 o'clock. And Sean, if you're unavailable, Randy and I can plug in.
Do the COVID update still? Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, and we can talk to Tim at 11 at today's COVID update as well. Okay, so that wraps it up for me, board. Oh, wait a minute, Brent's got something.
Just take a quick second to report that the financing deal for the clinic is officially closed. The money settled into our account this morning, just about 15 minutes ago. And so we're all closed, and we've got the money in our account, and the funding is in place to pay for the project. So.
Well, that is really, what a great day.
Yeah.
This train has obviously left the station, and if you're not on it, it's still in the distance. You got to run fast, jump on the back of the caboose on this thing and get on it. It's a great day. It's nice to know this thing's off and flying.
Yep.
Thanks, Brent.
Okay. Well, it is now 12 minutes after 10, so I think we better roll on to our consent agenda. Item number 1, consideration of approval of the warrant register. Item number 2, consideration approval of May 28th commissioner meeting minutes. Item number 3, consideration of approval of resolution 20-100, resolution appointing the Clear Creek County Planning and Building Services Manager as the zoning official for Clear Creek County. Number 4, consideration of approval of April 29th meeting minutes. And number 5, consideration of approval of June 2nd meeting minutes. And I see that one's highlighted. Beth, is that still on? It's in there. Okay.
I did that because it was a revision. That's why.
Okay. All right. So do we have anything to, either commissioner have anything to ask or a request to pull any of those 5 items out?
Hey, Sean's head nodding. I move we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Next item is Board of Health action item. Consideration of approval of Board of Health Resolution 20-06, amending the standing public health order requiring facial coverings in public where social distancing cannot be maintained and facilitating contact tracing. Bob Luffler. Bob, are you there? There.
Yes, I'm sorry. I keep pushing the wrong button to turn on the microphone, and it's been like 6 or 7 months, and I still use the wrong button. My apologies.
It's the one on your computer.
The resolution, and it was updated and sent to you by email this morning, but the only update was to have the correct figures in terms of the state and local experience. And because a link to a CDC website that was in our original resolution had changed, so we brought that up to date. So those are the only changes from what was in your packet. And the substance of the resolution has not changed. I think we brought it up, Dr. Ryan brought it up with you last week or the week before, or perhaps both, and there didn't seem to be a sense about a change other than his recommendation that we needed to continue with the face mask as a strategy for keeping the county open. And so what we changed was we changed it, and again, it was based on conversation during that discussion, and you didn't decide anything, but on paragraph 10, I changed it to be valid until December 31. And it seemed in the conversation that Dr. Ryan seemed quite comfortable that we were going to continue to need this through the end of the year, if not longer, and so that revisiting it every month might not be productive.
And also, as I understand it, Bob, if something completely unexpected happens and it's no longer necessary or a good idea, we can always make that adjustment as well, right?
Absolutely, that's within your province.
I think it has the, go ahead, George.
My apologies. Bob, I believe, say, the scenario that Sean contemplates happens, our public health director has the ability to rescind this on his own. It's not like we have to call a meeting or.
I think that's right.
I think it sends a good message too that that we expect, you know, that there, I mean, the idea that there would be a turn of events that would render mask wearing between now and December 31st, even if you look at the most optimistic thoughts anyone has had about a vaccine, the idea that it could be deployed and we would be comfortable to do that within that period of time is unlikely. And I think to recognize that is important. And as opposed to continue to do it every month as though it's as though this thing, that kind of sends a message this might be over any minute and it's going to be a little longer haul.
Yeah, and that wasn't, I mean, from my perspective, that wasn't really the point of me bringing it up. It was just if anybody out there has any concerns about us pushing it out that far.
Right.
There's
right.
No
and I didn't think you were, Sean. I was just thinking it just occurred to me that it does the added benefit of sends a message that's pretty, you know, that it's, I think, pretty factually based. So, and I didn't think you disagreed with that. So.
Yeah, no, it would be a very welcome surprise if that happens.
Okay.
Let's see here. Who's going to get to the page first, Sean? I move we approve resolution 20-06.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, 10:15 line item, we pulled within 3 minutes already. Continued Board of County Commissioner action items, consideration of approval of resolution 20-82, special use permit case SUP 20-0001 for the Mighty Argo Cable Car LLC, temporary staging of building materials, North Idaho Springs for Minor McFarland. We have Ken Van Dyne.
Yep, I'm here. Just got promoted to panelist, so I had to change some settings.
And Ken, I crossed over Brian McFarland too. I don't know if there's anybody else in the attendee list that you need me to cross over.
I think I don't see Fred on here. I thought he was going to do kind of an intro.
Oh, yeah, there he is. I see him. Okay,
Mary Jane was going to join as well. Mary Jane Lovely.
okay, I'll keep an eye out for her. Oh, there she is. Okay. All right. And if you guys need anybody else, just let me know.
Will do. Fred, did you want to kick it off with what we're going to discuss here?
Yeah, very quickly. Thanks, Ken. Hi, Commissioners. For the record, Fred Rolandhagen, Planning and Building Services Manager. Just wanted to touch up very quickly on protocol for public hearings for land use cases. What you're going to do is you're going to hear the staff report from Ken, and then what you want to do is ask if the applicant wants to make a presentation or say anything. We didn't do that in the last hearing, and I wanted to make sure that we afford the opportunity for the applicant to say what they would like to say, and then go into questions and public comment. And then it's usually customary to allow the applicant to respond to any public comment that occurs before you go into deliberations. So just a real quick protocol for how to run for how to go through that public hearing, but that's about all. So unless there's any questions about that, I'll turn it back over to Ken.
Thank you. Any specific questions on that? I told Fred, feel free to run through it because I'm the new dummy. I haven't had a presentation before the board prior to this one. So this is my guinea pig case for a temporary special use permit. What they're looking at doing is going to be the staging construction area for the Mighty Argo cable car endeavor. I'm sure most of you are aware with what's going on with that project. What the applicant is looking to do, Brian McFarland, his group, the subcontractors for Mighty Argo cable car, they've arranged to get permission from two owners for their gem pile site, they're calling it. It's roughly 2 acres. If I could do a screen share here, I don't know if that would help out. Okay, so here's the gem pile site. This sits about a quarter mile north west of Franklin Mine Road, and Santa Fe Mine Road. So the area they're looking at staging is here's Santa Fe Mine Road coming off the piece here. Franklin Mine Road is down here right at the border of the newly to be annexed portion from Idaho Springs. So they're going to be doing some work in Idaho Springs. What they're looking to do is improve this private access drive, doing some grading and so forth for ESCO company that's going to come in and do a lot of the earth work, smooth this out so they're allowed to get semis, heavier trucks up there. And the plan is to take the materials, raw materials from down in Idaho Springs, take them up to the gem site up here, which is roughly about 2 acres. Number 3 indicated on the map here, that's where they're going to place a rock crusher to go through and prepare the materials for the base foundation for the towers and for the terminals, both at the upper end and lower end for the gondola unit. Number 4 over here, this is the just an exhibit of the stationary material piles that they'll have in. Spoke with Brian. He believes the ESCO subcontractors are going to be doing about 30 to 40 trucks a day at the peak level. They do plan on having a mobile traffic unit out there because it is difficult for trucks to pass on Santa Fe Mine Road. There is some narrowness up there. Ultimately, after ESCO disembarks, after they've done their earthwork and the rock crushing operations, they'll disband after about 3 months. The next folks in will be the helicopter people. They'll be bringing the towers for the gondola. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I believe it's 19 towers. I think 2 are located in unincorporated Clear Creek County. So they'll have to get building permits with those. but it's roughly 30 days that they'll be on the site with the helicopter, building those towers and lifting them into place. It's a very sparsely populated area up here. I can find the here's the location map of it. This maybe give you a better idea. Here's the boundary line for Idaho Springs. They're going to bump that up here a little bit right here at Franklin Mine Road, which is the dotted line running north-south, and the Santa Fe Mine Road, which they'll use a private drive to access the gem site. That's what the grading is going to be done on. And as far as traffic control, they're looking at a number of options. They're going to have flaggers in place for any operations that involve the helicopter to make sure the road is clear. The next nearest house to this area is about a little over a quarter mile away. Dorothy Tennick owns a property over in this direction. They don't plan on moving anything over any residential areas, any of the towers. As far as the truck traffic moving up, they plan on having mobile traffic signals in place, either that or that and a combination of radio guys, just to keep the public aware. I think there's about 3 houses out here with local traffic, so it's very minimal impact for the local traffic. You're obviously going to have some noise and so forth when the helicopter comes in. We've taken a look at any of the wildlife layers. There's no concern for wildlife in this area for scaring them off. The nearest site is some lynx, LYNX in the area, but that's about a half mile to the east of this site. So Colorado Parks Division of Wildlife was not required to be notified on this. We did get a notification from DMRS, the mining folks, and they initially had some concerns that the fill material that was going to be used was coming right from the Argo crushed rocks and tailings and so forth. So they had concerns about potential contamination. Brian McFarland called them, cleared them up on that it's just going to be base bed rock that they're crushing up. They're not using mine tailing, mine waste for any of their fill and construction materials. After that, the project is supposed to wrap up with the final group on site is going to be the white construction group. And I gather they're the ones that are actually bolting the towers and so forth into place, doing a lot of the cleanup work, building the upper gondola station, and basically piecing everything together. So when they demobilize, the site's going to be completely empty. They estimate 1 year of time, and we've asked for a $5,000 financial guarantee just to make sure that everything is cleaned up on the site. From my communications with both property owners and mineral owners in the area, they're good with the terms of this. And be happy to take any questions, or Brian, if you have anything to add, feel free.
Well, I could give a quick update if you like, unless the commissioners have any questions. Commissioners, I'm Brian McFarland, Evergreen, Colorado. Nice to see everybody.
I think if we just consider this your opportunity to make your presentation, that would be good. And then we will fulfill that responsibility, and then we can take questions after that.
Sounds good. So just a quick update on the project. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but we have received our FDP approval from the city in May. We received our grading permit from the city last week. We're finalizing our contract with ESCO. We're going to start clearing trees on the upper landing site tomorrow, actually. And so that'll take a week to 10 days or so. And after that, ESCO will be mobilizing immediately thereafter. So they're about 2 to 3 weeks out, I would say, before they hit the site and start doing some work up here on the gem pile. The overall project schedule has us working through the winter time. Leitner Poma is our gondola contractor based in Grand Junction, and they've got a window this winter to construct the gondola. There are 19 towers, Ken, you're correct. So we want to make sure we maximize that. So the schedule is really important that we maintain this mobilization for ESCO in 2 to 3 weeks to hit our dates for Lightner Poma. They need to be done with the gondola construction by May or June of next year. The overall project has us completing right now in September of 21. And I just want to say, we would love to schedule a tour with the commissioners up at the site sometime. Perhaps after we get the trees removed, might be a good time to get up there and take a look if you have not been up there. So anyway, I think we're in great shape here. The team's been working hard. The city's been a great partner. County's been a great partner. And Stoy and Fred and Ken, appreciate all your support on this deal. We're just excited to, after 3 years of planning, to actually be able to put a shovel in the ground and get rolling here.
I imagine there are a few more people that are excited as well, and I see Mary Jane Lovely muted. Perhaps she would like to also speak for a second.
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know, Brian said he's from Evergreen, but he lives in Clear Creek County. And that the talented team that we have for this project are almost all Clear Creek County residents. And I'm just really proud to be finally moving forward from talking to Bob Leffler 2.5 years ago about this potential. So we're really excited to start actual construction.
Well, I know Travis Cook and a number of other people that are from over in Brian's neck of the woods and Sean's neck of the woods are involved in this project. And it's great that you have so many people that are locally employed working with you on your team. Do we have any questions from the commissioners?
I have a couple. And thanks you guys for bringing this to us here. And so I have one thing I want to point out, and I haven't found where it's listed in the resolution, but the staff report lists the day that this will be terminated as September 29th, 2020. And I'm thinking you all want a little more time than that.
We're not that good. Yeah, it needs to be 21.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, you'd have to get moving.
Nice one, George.
Zing. Yeah, so it's item 8, and it is in the resolution. And so I think we would want to modify that. I'm looking on 72 of our board packet or page 3 of the resolution. And then I also just want to ask, I think this question, I'm not sure who on our staff is best to field this one. I think it's typical for us to ask for financial guarantees. And maybe because we're dealing with like more road impacts and some of the other stuff we've done, I see higher fees in those areas. Are we sure 5,000 is an appropriate fee? It's not a fee. It's a financial guarantee.
Can I walk you through the logic, George, on why that we think the fee is appropriate? So we're going to have 3 contractors using the staging area. The first contractor, as Ken said earlier, is ESCO. And they've got their schedule is about 90 to 100 days. And then they're going to be completely demobilized. And they've got to clear out of the way there to make room for Lightner Poma and white construction. And they're not going to be leaving their equipment or their crusher in place up there because they've got to go put that to work on other projects. And we need them out of the way. So we'll manage that directly. Similarly, Lightner Poma will bring their towers and their equipment up. They'll assemble them. They'll have a few days of helicopter flights. And they'll be done in sometime this winter. And at that point, all of their equipment that they had staged up there will have been removed because it'll be put in place along the line. And then finally, White Construction, who's our general contractor building the buildings up there and all the finish improvements, they'll be staging their equipment and materials and the tool sheds and those kinds of things. But they'll be moving all that material down onto the site as they build the project out. So at the end of that, what you have is you'll have some, in all likelihood, the only contractor left in September of 21 is White Construction. And they might have some storage sheds up there, tool storage sheds, and a mobile construction office, and that's all. So really the cost to mitigate anything that's left over at the end of the project is just moving those trailers off the site.
Well, and I think, George, were you potentially referring to, first of all, does this $5,000 guarantee have anything to do with road impacts to Virginia Canyon Road itself? And I guess that's a question for staff, either Bob Leffler or Fred.
Yeah, unless Ken wants to answer. No, the financial guarantee is specifically to address the uses related to the special use permit. Any road impacts would need to be addressed through any kind of permitting process that Road and Bridge would require for impacts to Santa Fe Mine Road. Or if Road and Bridge provides a comment to the special use permit indicating there's certain impacts and that a financial guarantee is required, then we could throw that in. But Ken, to my knowledge, that we did not get any reply from Road and Bridge relating to this case, correct?
That's correct. I did add one line to the resolution in regards to roads based upon a conversation with Stoy, just to state that all applicable permits for flaggers and mobile traffic control devices will be obtained prior to the use of those facilities. But yeah, that's my understanding. The 5,000 is just to remove whatever material may be left up on the site. It has nothing to do with.
So this particular financial guarantee is only for the purpose of just the impacts on the site and on the private land itself. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right.
And just to have it on the record, staff agrees with the applicant that $5,000 is sufficient, noting that revegetation and reclamation are potential needs.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's a reclamation area. It's mostly a level plateau that's filled, I believe, with old mining rocks, not contaminated tailings or anything. And what Brian had explained is once they decide to leave the site, perhaps it's ESCO that was going to level out the materials and so forth, kind of as a layer, just to avoid further any kind of vegetation or erosion kind of things.
The site's actually, fairly severely eroded, both the access road, the primary access drive up to the site, private access drive, and the site itself. It's been there static for 100 years. And so there's been a lot of sheet runoff following the CDPHE EPA mitigations. So we're actually going to kind of restore things up there and improve the conditions from a drainage perspective. We'll have some berms up there to keep water from flowing off. And it is not vegetated, just a big waste rock pile right now. So there won't be any revegetation required. I just wanted to also add that in the staff report or in the agenda on page 3, it looks like it was referred out to Road and Bridge, and they said here, it says here that they had no concerns.
Yeah, I see that. Just wanting to make sure that all of this is on the record and we're not having any oversight. And so the reason that I asked this, especially pointing out the revegetation, is I did hear that part of the plan is to remove some trees. And I just want to make sure that we're not contemplating that those trees will need to be revegetated at the end of this.
So those trees, there are a few small ponderosa trees that are growing on the waste rock pile, but John Miner, the owner of the property, has plans to actually mill that material. So, he's got somebody who wants to come in and set up some kind of a milling operation downstream. I don't know when, but at some point they're going to be removing those trees anyway to do that operation.
Okay.
The other trees that we mentioned, George, are on my property where the gondola landing will be, and they're very strategically being harvested. Yeah,
I mean, and I'll just point out that strategically harvesting trees, there's some need to be doing that anyway, right?
Is what?
There's some need to be strategically harvesting trees as it is. I mean, it's actually not too smoky today.
A quick side note too on a related matter. So Ratcliffe Lumber is the tree removal company out of Evergreen, and they'll be transporting the trees to their sawmill in Clear Creek County to process the lumber there. So it's kind of another cool little sustainable story that we're adding to our quiver here.
Okay, well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. That's all from me. I'm satisfied.
Sean, any questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Are we due for public comment at this point? Fred? Do we have any public comment? On this agenda item, we had general public comment earlier, just to be clear.
I think Beth is checking for public comment. I'd heard some people might be here to comment, but I'm not sure if they are around or not.
Well,
You
I'd just
can-
like to remind people too, if you want to make public comment, you want to hover your mouse over your name and to raise your hand. Or at the bottom of the page, there's a Q&A button where you can submit questions there. So I'm just not sure a lot of people are that familiar with Zoom and know how to do those things. So I like to remind them.
Yeah, if you look at participants and then go to attendees, and you'll see your name in a window. And if you should be able to see an opportunity to raise your hand when you hover your mouse over that.
I have a question while we're waiting to see if anybody raises their hand. There is a written comment in the Facebook comments. Given that this was a formal hearing, I'm not sure, Bob, maybe you can guide us on how to communicate this comment. I think usually people say what their name is and where they live. And I have a name, but I don't have information on where this individual lives.
Well, I think you could read the comment with the name and then invite them to say.
Okay. Well, comment from Linda Lininger. Linda, I invite you to say where you live. We don't know if you live in Clear Creek County or not right now. The comment is, large machinery and trucks on Santa Fe Mine Road will greatly impact the road over the Alice Mine.
Ken, do we know where the Alice Mine is?
Yeah, it was a good question. I'm just looking at Clear Map now, trying to find that.
That name doesn't sound familiar to me in the area that we're constructing.
That begs the question of whether the Santa Fe Mine Road would be left in as good or better condition than it was found, I suppose.
Well, we can certainly commit to leaving it in better condition than it is today. How's that?
That's kind of what I thought, having mountain biked up there frequently.
Yeah, it's a little rough. But actually our contractor asked this last week if they could do some fine grading to that road to improve it. I said, well, that's not part of our application right now. And I didn't want to have it get held up, but listen, if that's something that you want us to commit to, we're happy to do that.
Right.
This is a further comment from Linda. She owns the Grantham Lode next to the Gem. The concern is for Santa Fe Mine Road to Gem Road.
Similar response.
And I believe, Bob, perhaps you can describe the code that we have. I think that we have a rule in place around use of roads and damage to roads, and wouldn't be altered by this approval. I'm trying to remember what.
No, I think you're thinking of the rule that applies to Guanella Pass Road. As a general proposition, people can't obstruct or damage public roads, and Santa Fe Mine Road is a public road. But that's kind of general statutory law.
Okay.
Not our regulation.
So we're protected should something happen that's unforeseen.
Well, I think the question is the same one George brought up a little bit ago, which is, do we need a commitment? We have a $5,000 deposit that's in place, a financial security to return the site. And we have a commitment from the contractor that he would leave it better than he found it, which is better than it is now. And one would presume that, and when you said same response a minute ago, Brian, I presume that means that you make the same commitment with regard to, a junction of that road, that it will be left in as good or better condition than you found it.
Yeah, to the extent that that part of the road is within, our traffic, of course.
And I think, should that reasonably be a condition of this special use permit? Is there,
I'm fine with that, adding that if you want to, of course.
I'm happy to hear from Bob or staff if they think that needs to be a condition. I mean, it sounds like we're probably protected because if the road is damaged, we have recourse.
and I'm happy to hear that too. That's why I asked the question. I just thought it'd be good to find out if we can make it a condition. And if it
Well, I
does-
think excuse me, I think it is an appropriate condition because the special use permit is for a use of land that requires truck hauling. And they're going to be hauling, as I understand it, they're hauling spoil up to the gem, and then they're going to be processing it and perhaps hauling it back to the work site. And so this could be, relatively heavy trucks on a not heavily used road. So you could have some impacts that you aren't expecting, particularly if this is going to go on over the winter time. So I think it's an appropriate condition if you think it, and it seems to have come up in that light.
Any objections from the applicants? Or?
None.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I accept Bob's advice as well. And so what does that condition look like? Do we need to take a moment to get something drafted up here?
Can you give me a minute?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be necessary to do that. We could ask Bob and trust him to craft that as well, with the addition, as we often do with our motions, in the interest of timeliness.
And Bob, if you just want to circulate that via email, I guess you need a vote on the resolution today, don't you? Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I'd be happy to accept a motion to pass the resolution with the instruction to staff to add a condition stating, in Bob's best words, after consulting with Stoy and Fred, that the road would be restored to, if necessary, restored to equal or better condition to that found at the outset of the job.
Yeah, and I'm happy to just await Bob's suggested language.
Now, I just want to reiterate Brian's invitation to get anyone and all up there on the site and feel that amazing outdoors and view that we're going to have up there. It's going to be stunning.
How about applicant will restore the roads used between the subject property and the construction site to equal or better condition to that found at the beginning of the permit?
That works fine.
I was working on similar. Bob, can you take a look at the screen share, that item 14? Is that accurate?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And I've got the date change up here to 2021. And then this is the other piece that I added that you might not have in your draft regarding road traffic safety, requiring all the permits as required.
That's fine. Ken, back down to your previous edit.
Yeah.
Please. Are the commissioners okay, and Bob, if we proactively do some road repair work ahead of, at the front end of the project, and then also come in on the back end and repair as well?
That was pretty much my expectation. The
Okay.
reason I thought this is almost, I mean, we want to know for sure that it's left in as good or better condition. And obviously there'll be stuff along the way, but having seen that road in the not too distant past, I'm aware that to do the work you want to do that you've described up there is going to take some work to get it good enough to do that. And you're going to want to make it better in order to perform your work, and we would presume that you would leave it that way.
Great.
You may need a permit from the Road and Bridge Department, and so I would invite you to contact them.
Who's the appropriate contact there?
It's either Carl Schell or Stoy Streepy. Stoy is the engineer out at Public Works. Carl Schell is,
You know,
Yeah.
I've met with them both. That's right. Okay, fair enough. I'll follow up with you, Stoy.
So I think we might be ready here. Are we ready? Is there anything else outstanding?
Just one thing, Ken, was the special use permit request for 1 year, or was it more, was the request more for 1 year?
It was for 1 year.
Okay.
Right. I think it looked like a copy paste that George caught, the 2020 versus 21.
Why don't
Okay.
we change that to October 2021? Since we're almost to October here anyway.
That's better.
You wanted October 20?
That's fine.
Does it say 1 year anywhere in it?
It does say 1 year earlier on in the staff report.
How about
The request is now for 1 year and 21 days.
Typically, the 1 year marks when they have 14 days to begin their cleanup of the site. So they technically have a little over 1 year anyway, giving them 2 weeks to clean up. So 1 year is specifically for the operations, and then 14 days for cleanup.
So we have about 7 days left that are 7 mysterious days included.
We can change it to October 13. That's fine.
Problem solved.
Thank you.
Does that solve it?
I think so. That's 2 weeks plus 1 year.
Right. And so if the contract terminates and then they have 14 days after, or not the contract, after the permit terminates, we want the permit to terminate on the 1st, right? Or at the end of the month, so that they then have their 2 week period to clean up. And I mean, somebody tell me that this is fine and I'll be satisfied. It's fine.
I'm hoping we finish sooner, George. Ha ha.
That's an answer to a different question.
Me too. Because I see in here for a duration of no longer than 1 year in the 3rd recital. And I don't know if there's anything statutory around 1 year that's magic there, or if we just need to make sure that all of these changes agree with each other.
Yeah, the temporary use permits, we can go anywhere from a short period of a couple of months up to 3 years. Considered temporary.
But the one we're dealing with is the one we have here today. So, and we are currently about 8 minutes over. So if we can resolve this small problem of what it should say with regard to time. So a minute ago, it was said that there's an additional 14 days. And so that allows the right amount of time. But then it sounds like that means, as George has pointed out, that the 14 days is not included within the 1 year. That's a sort of a grace period to finish cleanup afterwards. Is that correct, Ken?
That's correct.
Okay, so.
But the special use permit can last for longer than 1 year. It can last up to 3 years.
So we can actually pick any date and it will be fine. As long as it provides enough time for them to get it done according to their current request. So October the 20th is fine. October the 13th is fine. And October the 1st probably works. because or even September 29th, because they have another 2 weeks to clean up after they're done in a year, and they expect to be done well ahead of that.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I just making sure all of this agrees with each other. I see item number 4 under findings of fact. It says the 1 year duration for the use of construction staging. So maybe we modify that to say the use and take out the words 1 year duration. I mean, I just want this resolution to work, right?
I'm pretty sure the last comment would tell us that it works, as we've allowed enough time, because we can make it for 1.5 years if we want to, and so can they. We can do any of those things and allow the time to get it done. But so if we can, perhaps we can trust our attorney and our staff to get that figured out and make a.
I think Ken has highlighted the 1 year, and if you deleted that 1 year, you would remove the problem.
Okay, and that sounds good to me too. And so we're removing it in the recitals, the 3rd recital, and then finding of fact number 4. We're changing the date to October 20th, 2021. And we're adding that 14th condition. So I move we approve, sorry, I'm just trying to get this worked into a motion here. I move we approve resolution 20-82, temporary special use permit, case SUP 2020-001. With the changes. Can I get away with saying with the changes just cited?
I'll second the motion.
Second. Sorry, I didn't want to lose my concentration there. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you all.
You all.
We'll
See
see you on
ya.
the side soon, I hope.
Yep.
So we have a Board of Equalization item. Board of Equalization hearing for Safeway Stores Incorporated, number 390. Diane?
Diane, you're muted.
Okay, how's this? Can you hear me? This is for the Safeway store in Idaho Springs, for the personal property in the store. I have it valued at $483,290. They're requesting $288,426. I am using tables supplied by the personal property tables that are supplied by the Division of Property Taxation, which I am instructed to use. And they are disagreeing with some of the tables we're using. And they're just requesting an administrative denial because they are wanting to take us straight on to the Board of Assessment Appeals.
Okay.
And Bob, they have a new tax agent, so that's why this is happening again.
I was wondering why we were blessed.
Yes.
But we are, we've got a lot of company throughout the state of Colorado.
Correct. So I'm recommending denial.
Well, this seems pretty cut and dried. It looks like we're going to be back on schedule in the absence of any major questions and discussion based on Diane's explanation.
So you're requesting, or you're recommending it, and that's what they're requesting too?
Yes, they want an administrative denial so they can take us on to the Board of Assessment Appeals, the state.
I'm just looking for I'm fine with that. I'm just looking for the case number.
20-02. I think.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I move we deny the request for equalization in case 20-02 for the assessor's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Back on schedule.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
And with that, it is 11 o'clock and we are back on schedule. The Board of County Commissioners work session. We have our COVID-19 update. Dr. Tim Ryan, I see Suzanne and Tim here. Take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just to give you some raw numbers. Last week we were at 10 per 100,000 as far as an incident rate. We've now jumped up to almost 31 per 100,000. We have 3 additional cases from last week's number. So we have a total now of 40 cases in the county, cumulative cases. That is, our test positivity rate jumped from 0.6 to 1.34, well below the 5 threshold that the state is using, but indicative of really what's going on across the state. So if I can share my screen. Can you see my graph?
Yes.
So we went over this one last week. Last week we were on our way up on this trend. As you see here, we went up to about 624 new cases on a daily basis for quite a while. It has subsequently dropped over the last couple of days, but I would refer us back to any of these other trends, the two previous, that any one decline does not necessitate a total decline. So this is what we're seeing across the board in the state. We had a rapid incline over the last 2 weeks with a slight, the last couple of days decline. This map, can you see the map of Colorado now? This is a map of the 2-week incidents across the state. And as you see here, there are many counties that have a very high incident rate, including some of our closest neighbors, Boulder, Jefferson, Summit County. The testing, as far as that goes, Boulder has spurred a significant increase in the number of tests that have been done over the last week. And we talked a little bit about this last week, but the state lab has the ability to process around 5,000 tests daily. Every single day, with not an exception, they've received 13,000 plus tests a day. In some cases, it's been 15 to 17,000 cases in a day. So having said that, we are not getting the test results back in a timely manner anymore, I think it's fair to say. Even our priorities, ones that we've labeled as a priority, we're getting back 5 days later, as opposed to a 24-hour turnaround. So the information that we're getting is somewhat dated, but we're reacting in the very same way, regardless of the sort of the test results, and then sort of waiting around for those test results to roll in. The case that we had in the high school, I'm happy to report that we've gotten all the test results back, except one. All of those have been negative, other than that single case. I think that what that suggests is that what the high school is doing and middle school are doing in terms of precautionary measures of face mask wearing, hand washing, temperature checking, et cetera, is working. The fact that they had a case walk into the school, spend all day in the school, and no one else got COVID speaks volumes and accolades to the staff and faculty there and what they're doing. They're currently on a 2-week at home learning, primarily because of logistics. It has little to do with what's going on, but was delayed because we were not getting test results back. So they have to make decisions based on schooling before we get all the information back. So they decided that they would go to remote learning for the 2 weeks, including this week and next week, and then would proceed with in-school learning after that. So that's sort of the status of the high school and where they're at. The 3 additional cases we've had in the last week are all due to travel, either traveling out of the state and coming back, or folks coming into the state and visiting friends. all three of them are sort of in the same scenario. So again, we're not an island. We're not, we can't keep things out. We can only take measures here in the county. And I think we're doing a great job of that. The 3 cases that we do have, we were able to reach out to them quite quickly, get their contacts in place and contact them and put them all in quarantine. So we're able to stop, hopefully, the spread of that. So it's only limited to those 3 individuals. Any questions thus far?
No, I note when I look at the map, it appears that over about 80% of our border and almost all of our transportation lines and stuff were bordered by counties with greater or equal, mostly greater infection rates.
Yeah, and we
That's
did have a large cohort of individuals from CU Boulder visit us over the weekend to come and use the facilities here in the county to party. Luckily, they were identified and were basically sent home by the authorities. They were in quarantine and violating quarantine, so they were sent back to Boulder. But again, we're not an island. We're susceptible to all that's going on around us.
Yeah, I was just qualifying your island statement.
Yeah. So about half the states in the country are experiencing what we're experiencing in terms of an uptick in cases. Hospitalizations and deaths in our county have not changed across the state. They're roughly the same. I did get an email this week from, well, I get a lot of emails, but one from a parent basically dismissing COVID as a non-serious because we're not seeing an uptick in hospitalizations and deaths, that somehow we shouldn't take this any more serious than we do the flu. I want to take the opportunity to sort of address that because I think it's very meaningful. The flu, on average, we have about 290 to 560,000 deaths annually globally. We've exceeded that in this country already. The other thing about flu is we have significant resistance out in the community. People have antibodies in their body. They also have a vaccine for that. Right now, the most conservative estimate in terms of the fatality rate associated with COVID is 10 times that of flu. So I don't think comparing it to flu and dismissing it as not important or it only kills the elderly is missing the point and very misguided. It's 10 times deadlier than the flu. We don't currently have a vaccine, and we have less than 10% of the population that actually has immunity to this. So the potential there from an epidemiological and public health perspective is immense. The fact that we have a significant portion of our population susceptible to this. The other thing is the notion that somehow kids are not affected by this because they're asymptomatic or they don't have anything wrong with them. There's 2 problems with that. The first is we're now learning more and more information every day about the long-term impacts of COVID. So even though you may be 16 and asymptomatic, but PCR positive, we're finding that there's significant scarring of the lungs, inflammation of the heart, and these long-term health effects that impact the child that are not presenting in the form of symptoms, but will affect that child moving forward in terms of their health. So it isn't okay that kids get COVID and are asymptomatic. From a public health perspective, I'm trying to prevent all of those kids from getting it until we have a vaccine or some way to protect them more broadly. So hospitalizations and deaths is not the end. I'm trying to prevent us from getting there. When those numbers go up, that's when it's a little too late to do things. We're trying to prevent us from getting to that point of hospitalizations and fatalities.
So your point is that when the infection levels are going up, even though the hospitalization and fatalities remains low, we've moved beyond. I mean, there's the one part of it, which is the fatalities and the real serious illnesses, symptomatic illnesses we see. But the other part is a bit like smoking. It's something that sticks with you.
Yeah, right.
That may.
Yeah, they call those sequela. It's basically a fancy way of saying there's other things that can happen as a result of the illness, right? Long-term effects that we're now just starting to fully understand, or to understand and appreciate, that it goes well beyond just hospitalization and death. It goes to more long-term health effects like chronic fatigue. Individuals reporting 6-8 months out that they're still exhausted. They're not symptomatic in any other way. And we're now in the process through many clinical trials and just understanding from a medical perspective what's really going on in the human body from this virus. It isn't one that just enters your body, creates havoc, and then leaves. It seems to be sticking around far longer than anybody could possibly have imagined.
I recognize that that it's too early to say specific to this. You haven't had the time to observe. We'll know decades from now, maybe. But generally, when these types of things happen with other viruses, how much of those kinds of effects are? I mean, what's the general trend in terms of their reversibility or people getting past those degraded functions?
We don't know yet, Randy. It's a great question, and one that will be answered by the academics who are doing these longer term clinical trials and enrolling these individuals and looking at their physiology and what happens over time. The reason that some of this information has been gathered is really looking at the collegiate football programs. This is sort of the only silver lining of this whole thing. So what they noticed in these incredibly fit individuals is that they're, even though their symptoms were relatively mild, and the way that they discovered this was they're testing the football players sometimes 2-3 times a week. And so it isn't really based on symptoms. It was, they were identified because of the test. They were positive. The individual had relatively mild symptoms, if at all. But what they started to notice was an inflammation of the heart. This in general is a problem. But when it's in a young, healthy adult who is then exerting themselves significantly on the football field, as an example, when you have a heart that's enlarged to begin with, and then you're pushing it to the envelope, literally through physical activity, you run significant risk of a heart attack or stroke because of that inflammation that's there that wouldn't appear just by looking at the individual or looking at their symptoms. So how long that heart remains enlarged, we don't yet know. Is it weeks? Is it months down the road? Is it something that it may subside but come back a year down the road? Those are questions that we don't yet have answers to, and why this is an ever evolving and understandable, or understanding is progressing in an exponential way because of this science that's happening simultaneously to all that we're trying to do out in the community to prevent it from spreading.
I really appreciate you taking the time to explain that to us. I learned a new word. I think it's important that we continue to have the kind of credible, easy to access information that you bring. I do want to ask a follow-up question. It is shingles. Shingles, right, is an example of sequela that's a result of chickenpox. And it's a sequela that shows itself some 50 years after the initial infection. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And so it's not, I mean, I'm not trying to like build fear here, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that we could see an impact like this from COVID some 30, 40, 50 years after having contracted it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, fear aside, there's nothing fearful about it. It's a fact. It's just reality, and it's understanding those realities and keeping them in the back of your mind as you're making decisions about what you're doing and why you're doing it. No, this isn't Ebola. We're lucky it's not Ebola, but it doesn't necessarily, because it's not Ebola, it doesn't mean we should excuse it or suggest that things are going to be just fine. I'm a realist. I'm not an alarmist. I'm making decisions, and my thoughts are around what I see and what I can infer from the information that's in front of me, making some assumptions along the way. No, everything, I'm not going to paint a black picture. I'm just trying to present what the facts are and where my thought process is as a scientist and as a epidemiologist and as a public health director of how can I help prevent us from getting to a position where we have less control over it and we're more reacting. I really don't want to get to that point. I would rather try to be proactive in what we're doing to prevent things from happening. It's a lot easier and a lot more control on our part, which is what I want to do, is maintain control of what we're doing so that we're not in a situation where we're just reacting because we have no other choice.
So the bottom line is, it sounds like there's a good reason to not get sick regardless of your age.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my younger brother, who's an emergency room physician down in Austin, Texas, he's 46 in absolute physical shape. It knocked him on his ass for 3 weeks. He's never been sicker, according to him. So, again, I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but it's not just one that afflicts the elderly. Yes, they are more prone, absolutely, to death and to hospitalizations, but just because you're young does not mean you will not have potential ramifications of the virus. So, yeah, and as the director of the CDC went on record last week stating that a face mask is the single most effective way to stop the spread of the virus, which we know in this county, which is why the county commissioners passed the face mask requirement and continue to do so. But it's as effective, if not more effective, than any vaccine that might come out, right? That only provides you some protection. And sometimes, in some cases, people think it's a false sense of protection. I don't need to wear a mask because I'm vaccinated. No, it's not 100%. The vaccine, whenever it comes out, is not going to be 100% effective. We don't really have a lot of vaccines that are. It merely provides you a sense, additional protection, but this is by far the most effective, according to the director of the CDC. And in this day and age in politics, that says a lot, that this director of the CDC was willing to come out and say that very fact. So we should continue to do the good things that this county is doing, and those citizens in the county, and continue to do those things of wearing masks, social distancing, try to limit your travel. I know that's not always possible, but at least limit your potential for exposure. And if you do have family and friends coming to town, again, don't relax the protocol that you've been doing. It's all the more reason to do those sorts of things, to socialize outside with them and limit that potential. Because as 2 of the 3 cases we see, or all 3 of the cases that we have now, that's where it's coming from.
You bring up a really good point, which is people coming to visit. And I know, as an example, I was talking to a friend of mine that lives in Hawaii recently, and he said Hawaii's allowing people in. You need to have a test within 72 hours before boarding the plane. Yeah. And then they assume that you'll be careful for that 72 hours, or although that test reaches back to a point in time, also. But do you have any just general basic recommendations on isolation and quarantine for people that have, especially family coming to visit from out of state or anything like that? Is there a protocol that you recommend?
And I've talked to dozens of people, and they present their scenarios, and I try to walk them through them. If possible, have them stay at a hotel and socialize with them outside or out in the community more broadly. Limit your time inside with them, particularly if you're in your living room, small quarters, etc. I know it's difficult when people are coming to see sick family. I'm coming to visit my elderly parents who are on their last months, whatever. Obviously, having that connection and face-to-face time is important for those scenarios. But as much as you can limit your interactions in small quarters, your small living room, or you know what I mean, and limit any sort of sharing at all. Eating out of the same things when you're sharing meals, try to limit that as much as possible. Quarantining your guests who are only in town for 3 days isn't as practical as it as it sounds. But really trying to limit that exposure, right? You can have someone who's COVID positive within your proximity, as we've seen in the school. But if you take a number of safety precautions, you can help minimize the potential that's there.
My thinking was, the kids come to visit or something like that. It's, putting them in a hotel is not always an option. And so if you trust the situation and that I'm presuming that they've isolated or quarantined or been taking extra precautions for a week or 2 weeks ahead of time or something like that.
And it's really what we're seeing is driving a lot of this is the larger social gatherings. When people go back for weddings or reunions or funerals or you name it, that's really where a lot of that, where you get a larger number of people together, is really where the numbers are coming from. So it's less so in the one-on-one situations and more from the bigger sort of social gatherings.
Hey guys, I crossed over Samantha Dine from the rec district. I think she has a question. Sam, you can unmute yourself if you wanted to ask your question.
I do not have a question, Beth. I'm sorry. I was wondering what happened there. I was about ready to jump off and then I realized you clicked me over. I'm like,
okay.
Am I supposed to be saying something? So no, you're good. I'm sorry.
No worries.
But I think what Samantha and her team, just as an example, what Samantha and her team are doing at the rec center speaks volumes as to what you can accomplish, right? If you follow safety protocol and you do the things that we're supposed to be doing, you can stay open as a business and people can still utilize those services and be a contribution to the broader community. We don't need to shut everything down. We can still function. We just need to take precautions as we've been doing for many, many months.
George?
Can I ask you about, thanks, Randy. I'm trying to wrap my head around, we spent a lot of time talking about the volume of traffic that goes through us. We also have observed that it seems to be that our residents are more often contracting cases, much more often through our personal relationships and not through our economic relationships. And which causes me to wonder if we're maybe missing some information. If somebody comes through a business in Clear Creek County and contracts COVID, and they don't live in Clear Creek County, do we find out that somebody contracted COVID inside of Clear Creek County?
That's a great question, George. So this is how the system works, and this is true across the whole United States. So COVID is what we consider a reportable disease, meaning if you test positive, it's by law required that get reported by the lab that ran the test. So as we've discussed on this call before, we'll get test results from individuals who don't live in Clear Creek County currently, but their home of residence is here. So we had an individual from South Carolina, I think. He's living in South Carolina, but the positive test result was attributed to Clear Creek County. But when we follow up, we realized quickly that he doesn't actually live, the person doesn't live here. And so the case is attributed to us, but they don't live here. To answer your question, if somebody comes through, a tourist comes through and eats or visits a shop or wherever and gets COVID, the likelihood of it being pinned back to that establishment is quite low, right? A couple days later, they go back to Florida, they get tested positive. The contact tracers are going to ask them, where have you been? What have you been doing? They're going to say, oh, I was on a plane, I flew. So the likelihood of it getting back to any one establishment is incredibly low. But you raise a good point. And I think what is happening in Gilpin County, and I know I raised this point last week, an employee there, it would be attributed back to the establishment, less so than the person who walked in and lost all their money and went back to Jefferson County or Denver or wherever they went to, right? They're not going to attribute it necessarily to their time they spent in the casino. But the employee who lives here in Clear Creek County, the first thing we're going to ask them probably is, where do you work? And if the answer is the casino, it's going to open another series of questions that we're going to investigate. So that very well may be pinned back to Gilpin County and what's going on there or not. Employees, we have a very good way to track that, but tourists, significantly less so, for the whole purpose of, it gets quite convoluted. As a tourist, you've been to so many places, you traveled on an airplane or however you got there. So the likelihood is quite low that's going to be pinned back to Clear Creek County's establishments.
Thank you. I really appreciate the answer, because I think this gets at something that we need to realize as policymakers locally, which is that we also have a duty to make sure that those who visit here can do so safely.
Right.
And we don't have great information about our results like we do when we have a resident. And so I just wanted to kind of take a moment to emphasize that we can't really draw solid conclusions about the results of our tourism activity and its contribution to overall spread. We can know that it hasn't caused a bunch of our residents to get sick, but we don't really have information about what kind of global, statewide partners, neighbors we are.
I think that's a really great point, and it's one that we brought up early in our discussions over and over, that it's about making this place safe for ourselves as well as for the people that are visiting us. And I was thinking, I was taken by the question because I thought about a couple of times when you sneeze and you think, where have I been in the last 2 weeks? And then you try to remember all the places that you've done this or that in the last 2 weeks. And I think of that person you mentioned, the traveler crossing country, and so they visited this store in Idaho Springs, and let's just say we know that's where they got it. But they get back to Florida and they're diagnosed and they say, where have you been? Well, 10 gas stations, 5 stores, 3 restaurants. I tried to be careful in every one. How do you carry that back to know where it, so it seems like you have to go with what you know about the disease and its likelihood of spread and what good practices are and live by them, because you're never going to find the statistics that are going to prove out exactly how that was taking place and who caught what from whom.
Exactly. And I think, and this isn't new, I'm preaching to the choir in this group, but it's why you pass the face mandate, right? Face mask mandate. This protects you, but more importantly, it protects those around you from you and what you may or may not have. So it's sort of a two-way street in terms of the protection, the level of protection.
So do we have any other questions or comments? And I note that we did have Suzanne on, and I don't believe she's there anymore. And we have another item coming up in about 3 minutes. Any other quick questions from the commissioners?
I did learn something this week. I learned how the surgical masks actually work from a technological perspective, which I found fascinating, and even to, I learn stuff new every week. So these are statically charged, basically. So just like the force that exists in your dryer when that sock sticks to that blanket and won't let go for dear life, that same sort of concept in physics is at play in this mask. So it's electrically charged, so that as you breathe, sneeze, cough, whatever, any viral load that comes out is literally attracted and trapped in a electrically charged way, which is what holds it in the mask. Which I find, I'm sort of a science nerd, but I found that absolutely fascinating about this. People are like, oh, I can see through it. Right, you can see through it, but there's things that play in this mask that you don't really understand, and that's really what it is, about electrical charge in binding to the virus and keeping it in the mask. So that's my Science Friday piece.
We understand it. Well, we understand it now, thanks to you. And personally, I'm really glad that you're kind of a science nerd. I think that means you found your calling.
Yeah.
And Tim, just to let you know, we did, I don't know if you were on the line previously, but the board did have a conversation about COVID updates, and you are so filled with information and so fascinating to listen to.
Go on, Keith, please go on.
Yeah. They would like to continue the weekly COVID updates for now.
That's fine.
We were thinking twice a week for a little bit.
3 times, Randy, with your private call to me.
Yeah, this is as good as Bill Nye. I mean, I really appreciate it. So yeah, that's all I think from me.
Okay. Sean, anything?
I appreciate it too. On the other hand, I wish we had the political will to tackle some other obvious public health issues we have in the county, such as obesity. We've spent so much time talking about this, and there are other things that are right in front of us that we look past.
Right. And you brought those up lately quite a bit, and that's sympathetic to that. So we should tackle those.
Yeah,
and the distraction. Sorry, George.
Oh, my apologies. I didn't mean to interrupt. Sean, I'm all for hearing your ideas and holding meetings on all of these important public health issues. So let's prioritize them. Let's list them off. I mean, obviously we're in the middle of a global pandemic, so we got to focus on this one too, or else it'll get out of control on us. But we were saying the same thing about obesity in the 90s, and guess what? It's out of control. So yeah, let's do this.
And just for the record, I don't spend 99% of my day on COVID. I'm doing a number of other things. So we're Sean, to your point, we are continuing to carry out the mission of public health more broadly than COVID and the update that we give. So on a daily basis, absolutely. Yeah, and happy at any point to have a discussion around what else we're doing in the department and where we see the need for improvement. Because there's certainly a lot of that, and where we think we might make some improvements.
Yeah, and that statement wasn't directed at you; it was directed at myself and the.
Oh yeah, I know. And
from a policy perspective, there are really important things that just aren't that urgent or sexy that we're ignoring.
Yeah, it's true. We accept a lot of those things as kind of the way life is, and sometimes you accept it as the way life is in the place where you are, and you find out it isn't that way everywhere else, and working on it can make it better. And we can do those things.
I'm thinking about air quality, right? Our air quality monitors. If Charlotte Hampson was still with us, she would have been pretty upset with us for not having asked her to come and give us an update on that. So great point, Sean.
One of the things we talked about earlier this morning was a work session with Human Services. I think we need to do the same thing with public health, and we'll have Tim come in and just kind of go over all the various public health programs, projects that he and his team are working on. But we'll set up a work session here in the not too distant future for Tim.
Yeah, sounds good.
And just for the record, as long as we're kind of on this, and we could take another minute, the air quality and water quality issues, we're hoping to drive that throughout the region as part of the I-70 stuff. It's one of the messages we're carrying out to during the reassessment on the record of decision, because of the things we found out about some of the air quality monitoring we've been doing. So I think upping our game on that one a little bit would be very helpful to us to understand. And it's not just, in the end, what we'll catch is not just the results of transportation, dense transportation in our narrow corridor, but other things as well. Because having the monitoring devices out there is going to tell us a lot and help us. So.
Yeah, and I know this is getting a little bit far off the path we're on, but I mean, Dark Sky Initiative is something that we've at least mentioned out loud a couple different times that potentially has quality of life and mental health implications. And I think there's a lot of stuff like that if we're going to set aside time on a weekly basis, we should broaden our horizons a little bit.
All for it.
I would support adding to as much as we think our staff can handle. I think right now, being in the middle of a global pandemic, we got to focus on this too.
Absolutely. And from my perspective, and one, I've never quite understood why we do the things we do in this world more broadly, but the human body can only live a few minutes without oxygen. It can only live a few days without water. But those are the two things that we spend the least amount of time as a human species on protecting, which is mind-boggling to me. And so I think those are critical aspects of human health more broadly. So I'm more than happy to engage in that discussion and any work that we do moving forward on that.
Yeah, I think that I think that we are in a global pandemic, but life goes on, other kinds of life goes on, and the issues don't go away during a global pandemic. And we've done a good job in the county of staying on task and continuing to work on a lot of other things besides the pandemic. Granted, that's our focal point right now.
Yeah.
But I think I've heard several things brought up that allude to other kinds of health issues in the county that are beyond pandemic that I think are, there are things that have been hot button issues for a while, but sometimes they're a little more like, I don't know if they're silent killers, but they're silent degraders of life, and staying on those would be good. That said, it is 11:35, and we have a work session to discuss the Sheriff's Office retirement program. We have Sheriff Albers here and also have Kate Gramillion. I think we have the sheriff here. Yes, there he is.
Thanks, everyone.
Good morning, commissioners. I am going to let Jeff Smith, Captain Jeff Smith, present the FPPA proposal to you guys. So Jeff, you want to come on? Go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, I sent this to Beth, and I'm assuming she forwarded it to all of the commissioners, but I'm not going to embellish much. I'm just going to kind of read it for those people who haven't seen this form yet. A few agencies in the state were able to move to FPPA in 2017 or 18. We started looking in 2018, but decided to wait as one sheriff, and I think it was Jeffco, put a bill before the state legislature that was passed in 2019. That made the process easier. When this occurred, FPPA started their own legislation for 2020 to change some things as they realized it was possible for a large number of agencies to join, and they wanted to make sure they were ready for it and would be able to remain solvent. The 2020 bill introduced by FPPA and passed changed things in all the preceding laws and statutes. The main reason for the FPPA change we are looking at is it will increase the amount individual officers will receive when they retire, and it is for the rest of their life, not a fixed 20-year line or time period that COERA gives. Most people probably do not live more than 20 years after they retire, but some do, and nothing would be worse than to run out of money and still be alive and in need of funds. That's kind of a historical thing. The first step, as we understand it, and maybe Bob Loeffler has a different interpretation of the law, is that the commissioners need to pass a non-binding resolution, which allows for the FPPA to come out, or virtually, and give a presentation on FPPA. Bob suggested when we first started looking into in 2017 or 18 that COERA also come out and give a presentation so you can see the differences, and we agree. This will then allow us to have mandatory election of the sworn deputies of the SO, which would require 24 sworn deputies out of the 42 sworn deputies, or 55% approval to move it to the plan. There is also a provision for sworn deputies to opt out of the plan and remain with COERA, with the commissioners, and COERA's blessing. We have tentatively looked at what is called the SWDB-SS, and I don't think that zero is supposed to be there, statewide benefit plan with Social Security component, because we have chosen this plan. All of the percentages talked about in the law are cut in half, since we would be getting a reduced FPPA benefit because of Social Security, which we will still pay into. There is in the law a requirement that the county's portion must increase from the present 4% paid in by the county by 0.25% each year beginning in 2022 until it reaches 6% in 2029. This affects only the 42 sworn deputies and not the civilian employees of the SO or the remaining county employees. The law also has what is called an affiliation cost for FPPA taking on more members. This is 1.8% per year per sworn deputy. The law further states this cost can be borne entirely by the county, entirely by the sworn deputies, or split 50-50, 0.9% each. We are okay with any of these options. As a side note, we think there should be a separate discussion about those sworn people who have been here 15 years and as such receive 2% benefit in a 457B plan for their longevity. We think that taking this 2%, which presently is given to 8 sworn employees of the SO, and put towards the plan, I have spoken to 3 of the 8 employees and they are okay with that. We realize this is a terrible time to bring this up with COVID-19 issues and budget issues that are affecting the county, but obviously a pension is a long-term plan. And as they say, we will all get through this together. One thing that wasn't on there is we have an employee or an applicant for the job. And one of his questions was, what employment retirement plan do we have? Because he has been with FPA, with the Denver Police Department and the Fire Department. And he wanted to continue with it. But we don't have that plan at this point. Not that that's a make or break for hiring somebody. That's just the beginning of the process. It was one of the first questions, but it obviously is a question that some employees have when they get hired. When we were young, we didn't care. All we wanted was a job. As you get a little older, that changes. That's all I have to say on that. If there are any questions by the commissioners or anything else or anything Bruce or the sheriff want to say.
I think we're good, and just answer any questions that you guys might have.
I guess I had a question. Thanks for coming before us and bringing this up. As I understand, what you're talking about is moving from a defined contribution plan to a defined benefit plan. Is that true?
I get those confused, but I believe that is correct.
And so when I heard about a 4% contribution growing to 6%, my understanding of the way a defined benefit plan is that that's not a guaranteed maximum contribution that the county would be responsible for, that essentially that contribution would have to be adjusted based on the longevity of the plan participants, also based on the returns of the stock market and other things that the county has no control over. And I remember back in 2008, a lot of agencies were required to come up with a lot of money at a horrible time to basically keep their defined benefit plans solvent. Does all that kind of ring a bell?
The 2008 doesn't necessarily, but I do remember the economy at that time, so it wouldn't surprise me. You are correct. The thing is that could change at any time. They have to go before the state legislature to get it passed to do that. They can't just arbitrarily do it. And the one thing that's in the law about this affiliation cost is they anticipate that that will end after 2 years. And they can reduce it. Prior to that, they cannot increase it. And that's also written in the statute, if I remember properly.
I'm not sure I follow that last part.
The affiliation cost, the 1.98%, which you can either pay all, or we can pay all, or we can split it with you 1.9 each. They are saying that that cannot be increased. They can decrease it before 2 years is up, but they anticipate that it will end in 2 years, and that cost will no longer have to be borne by any of us that are paying it.
Yeah, again, my understanding, just my fundamental understanding of a defined benefit pension plan is that you are not guaranteed, your future financial liability is unknown. It could be lower, it could be higher than what you anticipate, and that commitment is also based on things that are out of your control, such as stock market returns.
And that I agree with that. And the only thing I know is that they have to go to the state legislature to get it increased. They can't just arbitrarily do it themselves, meaning the FPPA board.
John, just to make sure I'm following you, the you that you were referencing would be us as the payer of these plans. Okay. So you're pointing out some pretty serious risks associated with adopting a plan like this.
Yeah, I see two risks. I think that's one of them, George. And the other one is just, I don't know if I would call it an equity or fairness risk. I mean, if we're talking about giving the rank and file of the county one plan that has one percentage and cost associated with it, and then carving out a relatively small number of people for what looks like a more lucrative plan that has some morale and other risks associated with it too.
I have a question. So in this FPPA plan, will the cost of this be bore by Clear Creek County only, or will it be still the employee contributing to it as well?
The employees will also go up to a 6% maximum, again at 0.25% per year until 2029.
Don, you know the history of these retirement plans a little better than I do. Those pension plans that really threatened the airline industry, I think that was back in the 90s, were those defined benefit plans?
Yeah, I mean, the difference, I mean, I'm a member of FPPA because I did 22 years with the Evergreen Fire Department. And my benefit is if you work there for 20 years, you get $600 a month for the rest of your life, no matter what. So the FPPA's account that supports that $600 a month for me and all these other volunteer firefighters and different people around the state, if the markets crash and that number goes down by half, they still have to pay me the 600, right? I as a participant don't bear any risk, and the plan and the associated funders of those plans bear all the risk. Investment risk.
Defined benefit plans don't seem to have been the wave of modern retirement, modern being the last 20 years or so, retirement programs. And I'm not sure it's the wave of the future. There has been a federal pension guarantee fund. I think sometimes it's wavered, which has had to step in to take over defined benefit plans of companies that failed. And maybe that's what you were referring to when you talked about the airlines, because an airline was one of those. We may want to, get some thoughts, whether it's from the FPPA or from Cora, or perhaps you might like to hear from some other person in the financial industry to address with you these issues, because they are serious issues. And as the captain said, it unwinds, or maybe that's not the right word, but it goes on for a long period of time. And except some of us that are on this end of the spectrum, they're doing long range planning. So, I wonder, and maybe you don't have to decide right this 9 seconds, but I wonder if you want to see if there's somebody that you might learn from. And again, if you're interested in pursuing this, then I think you need to invite FPPA and Cora to come and talk to you. But you might want to consult with someone else before you decide whether you're interested in embarking on this adventure of entertaining, taking the peace officers out of the defined contribution plan.
Yeah, and just real quick about the airlines. I mean, one of my friends is a United pilot, and when United went bankrupt in, I think it was 2001, his pension went down by 2/3. And so that was just basically the pension guarantee fund you talk about, Bob, isn't something that's going to backstop those liabilities up to 100%. I think it goes on a case by case basis. But anyway, just speaking for myself, I agree with you, Bob. I mean, the trends have been away from pension plans and towards defined contribution plans. And I, as one of the commissioners, would be open to a conversation about what it would look like to change the benefits. But my preference would be to do it for everyone equally in our entire organization. And my second preference would be to do it in such a way that was a partnership with the employees. And I know a lot about 401k and 403b plans. I'm not quite as smart on 401as, which is what ours is currently, and 457s. But you know, some sort of an enhanced match, because I think right now, Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, the employees put in 4% and the county matches with 4%.
Correct. And we
Yeah.
do a 2% to those who've been here 15 years or longer into their 457 plan. But yes, we can do some sort of a change in our agreement with Cora to either increase the amount that we're contributing and or match as well. So we could do something similar to what they're talking about, is increase every year a certain percentage for everybody so that they're gradually getting up to 6%.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's any, I think Captain Smith mentioned something about 20 years. I mean, my understanding of a defined contribution plan, it all depends on your investment returns and how much you spend. I mean, it may last more than 20 years. You may burn it all in 18 months, you know, if you're not being responsible when you retire. But yeah, that's, and by the way, people have been talking about Cora. I know they changed their name. They're actually CRA, right? Colorado Retirement Association. And for the record, I think that they're a fine organization and I think they're well run. And that's not to say we shouldn't look around to see if there might be something that's even better. But I've been pretty happy with what I've learned about their operation.
Yeah, if you go for broke like I have with my investments, I'm doing fine.
Would you like to have us see if we can find somebody that can give us some guidance on, you know, a little more broad topic about retirement plans before you dive into the specific question of entertaining whether the peace officers might be approved to vote on leaving?
That would be my preference. And the other thing I'll say is, I think that we probably aren't fully leveraging CRA's educational capabilities. I mean, to Captain Smith's point, I think, you know, people need to be confident in what they're doing and the decisions they're making now, they're going to affect them in 20 and 30 and 40 years. And I don't know that we're fully leveraging the resources we already have available to us.
To gain that confidence. Yeah, to be better informed on it. A couple of things stick out to me. The morale issues that you brought up earlier, I think it was Sean, you mentioned it. I was moved by how we're all going to get through this by being in it together. And I think for all of us to be in it together, we actually have to all be in it together. And so you know, my thoughts on a retirement plan are something that is predictable and sustainable and that you know will be there, and that within an organization contains equity. And it doesn't mean that somebody can't teach me something that shows that there's no additional risk and that a lot of those problems are solved, so that somebody's not getting more than somebody else from their employer. And so it's going to take some education on my part to be able to understand that in a way that makes me confident. So I'd have to have more broad-ranging education on this particular spot issue and this plan to feel comfortable.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a lot to wrap our heads around, and I'm really grateful we've got Sean here who knows this stuff really well, and I kind of accept your guidance, Sean. A fear that I have is, you know, if an economic downturn increases what we have to contribute to this plan, and we also know economic downturns will cause our revenues to drop, I worry about our ability to provide other critical services at some point in the future. So I do think this is something we need to look carefully at. I think that there is clearly a lot that's unique about the role of being a peace officer. And so I don't think it should be disregarded out of hand that they might have, there's a justification for a different retirement plan. I just want to really understand it well and understand the risks that it poses to us and our financial future as a community.
And that's pretty much, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, George. No, I was going to say I'm pretty much, and that's basically what I'm trying to say is I want to have an open mind about its potential, and maybe it serves as a model that can be used, for others as well. But I've got to understand more about it to know if that's even feasible, and if it's not, then how we can overcome some of the other differentiations, over equity issues and over cost issues, sustainable cost issues. I want to make sure if we do it, it's good for the county, good for the employees at large, and good for the SO employees as well. At the end of the day, that it is a sustainable program. That it's not, doesn't have a pitfall, an airline industry pitfall built into it somewhere. That you can is programmed in if certain circumstances come to pass. And the idea of an economic downturn is not preposterous right now. And we already have budgetary issues budgetary limitations. So I think getting FPPA and COSARIAN to talk to us about this would be good, and whomever else we can find as well. My preference is to just not go to a couple of different presentations. I don't just want to travel and get a free visit at 2 different condos to see which one's the best to buy. I'd like to, hear it from a pretty impartial source too, that's has less to gain.
Well, let's see if we can, and I don't know that we can, but I would think we ought to be able to get somebody who doesn't have a stake in the game, if you will, that could come in and give some background that would assist you in further conversation. And that's what I'd like to focus on, because that's the way I'm kind of interpreting where your heads are.
Sean, would a financial advisor be somebody that we could use as that type of a cross between everything, one that typically advises on all aspects of life, but would know a little bit more about retirement stuff?
Yeah, and I think I don't disagree with the idea of doing that with somebody different than CRA. I know, for example, there's a shop in Denver, RPS, Retirement Plan Solutions, I think, and they run a ton of different retirement plans, including for nonprofits. And I know the owner, this guy named Nathan Carlson, so I'd be happy to put you in touch with him and see if he thought maybe one of his staff would be suitable. And like I said, they don't produce any plans. They're a third-party administrator, so they don't necessarily have a dog in the fight for Nationwide versus T. Rowe Price or Fidelity or whatever.
Well, I think we have our direction that we needed from today, and it sounds like more information, more education would be in order. So we will move forward in that direction and see what we can come up with for some further discussion.
I'd just like to say I'm glad we're at least moving forward on some conversation about it. That was the concept of this whole idea. Let's find out what we can come up with or do or change if we need to. And so I appreciate the thought process.
Well, we are at 11:59. And our next item, we don't show a lunch or a break in there. We have an action session at 12:30 to go over reserves fund and CARES funding action. My guess is that we might want to wait till 12:30 to do that. George, what's your recommendation?
I mean, my personal preference is for us to take the half hour that's built into the schedule here.
Lunch
Okay.
break. Lunch break.
What's that? What'd you say, Sean?
Lunch break.
Lunch break.
Sean and I aren't exactly threatening a strike.
A chant has kind of started, at least in Evergreen, but yeah.
It takes more discipline on my end to be able to maintain any. So I don't eat anymore. I just stopped eating entirely. So it's not important to me, but I'm willing to, but moving around could be helpful because when I get up from this chair after about 4 hours sitting in it, I like walk in a chair position for about 3 or 4 minutes till I can stand up all the way. So I'm happy to take a break.
See you at 12:30.
So with that, see you at, see you at 12:30.
Thanks. Hello.
Hey, George.
Randy, I see it looks like maybe you're continuing your mission to not be a 72-year-old up 2 stories on a ladder.
Oh, you've been on Facebook. Let me see if I can find that picture somewhere. I think I posted it off my phone. I'm not sure. You mean that picture?
That's the one.
Now, well, I knew that was going to be ridiculous to do at 72 years old, so I figured I had to do it this last weekend because I'd be too old next time. So.
You know, I'm a lot younger than that, but I wouldn't climb that ladder.
Hey, Alyssa, I see just received an email. You might already be aware too. It looks like they just created that grant program. They just opened it up.
I have not received that email. Will you forward that to me, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
No pressure.
Let me guess, it closes tomorrow.
No, 2 weeks.
So it's 12:33. We're still waiting on Sean, right? He didn't send anybody he didn't have a need to be somewhere else.
I didn't see anything. Oh,
there
here
he
we
is. I just saw him pop in. So we're good to go. Sean's here. All right, our next item, our 12:30 item is currently 12:33, is consideration of approval of Clear Creek County Reserves Fund and CARES funding action. Commissioner Marlin.
Yeah, and I think I'm just going to kick it over to Brett. I did ask for us to talk about this, and I think Brett's the one with the information.
Well, we had touched on this last week during the COVID costing analysis update. And the discussion in brief was that we had set aside $20,000 allocated to the county for direct expenses, and then another $200,000 to be held in reserve in case we needed more money. It seems like at this point, we will spend that $20,000 allocation, but probably will not spend the $200,000 reserve. So as we discussed last week, I think that I'm comfortable recommending to the board that we release $100,000 back into the countywide pool. But I would like to still retain up to $100,000 at this point for unexpected needs for the county. And then we can revisit that. We've got 3 months left in 2020. We can revisit that periodically, maybe once a month, to see how the additional expenses are coming in and see if we want to release additional increments back into the countywide pool.
That makes sense to me. I think the only thing that I'm a little concerned about is running out of runway and having needs out there that are unmet because of administrative delays on our side. So I would want to make sure that we were teed up to be able to deploy whatever's left, and it not be like December 29th or something, like maybe December 10th or something like that.
I agree. I'd like to be very conservative about shepherding this money.
I'm a little concerned that is not really good faith actions with our partners to this agreement. We, in this agreement, said that we were going to have a decision by the end of August, and that decision was going to be based on known costs. And so if we haven't identified any costs, I mean, if we have identified costs, I know last week 2 weeks ago, we were looking at about $30,000 that we were reasonably certain we would need. I think that we've gained a little bit of information, and not all the news is good. The value of that donation came in a little bit lower. And so whatever it is we think we know we need, I think it's totally within our obligation and right to keep. But I am not comfortable keeping it in case we need it because of something unforeseen with 3 months left in the year.
Well, the biggest need for that cash is the cash match for the FEMA reimbursement. And that's at about $50,000 right now based on non-expenditures. And so with 3 months left, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that we're gonna continue to accumulate the county match for ongoing FEMA expenses. And that, if we're at 50,000 now, then within a couple of months, we might be at 75,000. So what I could do is I could project that more accurately based on what is it now, 6-month history of COVID expenses. I could dial that in, but two things to further inform that recommendation. One would be that I sent out an email last week after last week's board meeting asking people to notify me of large and significant expenditures coming up. And I didn't receive any response on that. So that could either be good news that there aren't any large purchases on the horizon, or it could be that nobody knows about what's coming up. So I would be more comfortable with going ahead and extrapolating to the end of the year of what we know based on the 6 months experience that we've had so far. And I would put it at about, again, 75,000 by the end of the year. So if you guys feel comfortable with that, then we could increase that release back into the countywide pool. But you know me, I like to be conservative, and I like to carefully safeguard general fund balance.
Okay, Brian, I want to ask you about, so you said the FEMA match looks like it could be $50,000.
Well, it's $50,000 now. So extending that out to the end of the year, it could be 75,000.
Okay, and does that include the value of the face masks that were, or the face shields that were received?
Well, see, in-kind donations, that's not cash. So we're only going to get reimbursed for 75% of our total reimbursable expenses. The in-kind donation, in some cases, that helps mitigate cash out the door. But in this case, it does not. We've spent the money that we've spent, and we're going to get reimbursed 75% of that.
And so the donated items cannot be used as a portion of our cash mask. Is that what I'm hearing? Cash match. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it can be under certain circumstances, but in this case, you know, the money that we've spent out has been hard cash, and so if we submit, just to make the math easy, if we submit $200,000 to FEMA, they're going to reimburse us $150,000, which leaves us in the hole for $50,000. And that in-kind donation, they're not going to say, okay, well, that the value of that was $8,000, so we'll give you another $8,000 in cash. Because their 75% is that's a hard number, and so our in-kind donation isn't going to affect the amount of cash that we've already spent.
It seems to me that if you have an expense that you didn't pay cash for, that would increase, say, from 200,000 to 220,000, and then you would get 75% of that back, right? I mean, have dealt with this stuff at a much smaller scale, but that's the way the logic seems to work to me.
The only thing I was thinking that too, but like, it would almost seem like you're double dipping, right? Because they gave it to you, and then getting reimbursed would be getting paid a second time, potentially.
Right. And my experience with this was during the 2013 flood. And we had several different categories of in-kind donations, but we didn't include donated items in our reimbursement request. So, and basically, I can't give a definitive answer on that right now. I have a call scheduled for tomorrow with our DOLA person. So let me discuss this with her and get a definitive answer, and I can put that out tomorrow afternoon.
Okay. Because it seems like what I heard you say, Brent, was 75% of reimbursable expenditures.
Right.
As opposed to contributions is what you're thinking, how you understand. And that's FEMA we're talking about when we
right.
say
It's FEMA that we're talking about.
And so the question is, what is not going to be reimbursed by FEMA, and therefore what do we want to see reimbursed by CARES funding if possible?
Correct.
And in neither case, so what you're saying is the face shields don't actually affect the product of either one of those equations. Is that correct?
I believe that to be correct. Again, I can get a definitive answer pretty quickly, and I prefer to remain undecided until I can get that uncommitted, I guess.
And George, what do you see as our So, which means we'd be back on October the 6th to talk about this again. Is that correct?
We could do that, or we could make a decision today to release, 100,000, 125,000, whatever we feel comfortable with now, and hold in reserve a reasonable amount to cover the direct expenses that exceed the $20,000 plus the 25% FEMA match.
So you would hold back the 25% FEMA match.
Yeah.
Okay. And then make a projection of additional expenditures, which may or may not come true in the next few months. Is that right?
Yeah.
I heard you say.
Yeah, exactly. Project out till the end of the year based on what's already gone out the door, and hold back the 25% match on that as well.
Okay, George.
Yeah, I mean, the logic is legitimate. The timing is something that we gotta put this thing to bed.
That's why I asked.
I do want to point out that we already released 100,000 of the reserve a couple weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago. And so we've got 100,000 left in our reserve. Brent, if you are pretty confident we're not going to need more than 75,000, we could go ahead and release 25,000 more of it today. And then is it reasonable within a week for us to, I see a few things that need to happen. We need to understand how this contribution affects our bottom line. And I'm totally willing to have been wrong on that. I realize dealing with some small grants is a little bit different than dealing with FEMA. A lot different. The other thing that I think I heard you say is that you sent an email to all of our staff asking if there were planned expenditures or missing expenditures. I would like it to be made clear to our staff and our elected official partners that they've got 1 week, and we need, because we owe it to our partners, we owe it to our community to make sure this money gets spent well. And
yeah, I agree. I think, and I'm sensitive to what Sean said a little bit ago. About making sure that we hold that insurance as long as possible. It shouldn't be such a short period of time that the other community members haven't already moved on because it wasn't available to them, or are unable to respond within a reasonable period of time themselves to get it. So I think but at the same time, I would like to know that we're protected for the legitimate purposes for which these funds can be used here. So I guess what I heard is, let's make sure they know that if they've, that any of our in-house partners have their information to us within the week. Again, yeah, it's not something we're for a couple months. So.
Yeah, and I'll reassert that. I'll also follow up with phone calls over the next 2 or 3 days, just to keep bugging.
I'm sensitive to George's point to the extent that we said we were going to do something. And if the reason why we're not doing it is because we're taking our time doing our own homework, I don't think that that's a good reason. So I'm in favor of releasing the 100 today and actually coming up with a numeric number next week. And if that means we release another 25 then, or another 17 or another 49 or whatever, that we do it sooner rather than later.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds great to me.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
So the 100 was already released, and
refresh my memory on that, because I don't actually remember formally releasing that. Beth, do you have that?
Maybe while we do a little bit of research on that, Bob, can you give us an idea of like what a formal release looks like? I assume we don't need to pass a resolution. I assume we can just sort of issue staff direction.
Well, I don't think that's wrong. I would like to see it a little bit more formalized than that. And the question just raised is making me struggle to remember how that was done, because I remember it the same way you do. But I think it was done pretty informally.
Yeah, I mean, I would characterize it as having issued staff direction. And if that's not sufficient, then maybe a third thing that we need to do is make sure that we're posted for action next week so that we can make a motion and have it be formal.
You could authorize the 100 release on September 15th. I have it in the notes.
Okay.
Is it in the minutes, or have we not got those minutes yet?
It's in my rough notes.
Yeah, and the reason it's clear in my memory is because 2 days later I went to a meeting with our partners and told them that we had released $100,000.
Yeah, you talk about that in the notes.
Well, let's formalize it next week with a motion.
Okay. And by that time, have some more finite information to be able to give every bit that we can.
We could make this an action item today if you want to do anything.
Oh, it is. That's right.
So I don't know if you want to formalize it now or next week. It doesn't matter to me.
So we could would the suggestion be to formalize the 100,000 today, which hadn't been done previously, and then be prepared to balance the books a little tighter next week with another motion?
Yes, I think that's possible if today is an action session. I don't have that part of the agenda. That was an add-on. Then if you want to, I think it would be better if you made a motion to do that, and then it would get into the formal minutes.
Yeah, it is an action session. And I think in light of what George just said, I think it would be considerate for us to go ahead and formalize that now if we have failed to do it either formally or informally previously, and make it the truth.
Yeah, so the last question in my mind is the amount. I know, Brent, you started out by saying you're pretty certain we won't need more than 75. So Sean, Randy, how do you guys feel about just releasing 125 today?
If that's okay with Brent, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That said, we've completed our agenda today unless there is an executive session. I checked with Bob earlier. He said he has nothing to call for an executive session to either one of you.
I have a quick one about HR, and it is really quick.
Okay.
I move that we move into executive session for the following purpose.
That was too quick. Conference with attorney for the public body for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions regarding personnel matters, but not regarding commissioners or elected officials, or to discussions of personnel policies generally, pursuant to 24-6-402 sub 4 sub F.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And who will be sending us a link?
I will.
Okay. And we will now move into executive session. No written minutes will be kept of the session. And for the purpose of our archive, we have completed our executive session and no written minutes were kept of the session. And with that, that's the end of the public portion of the meeting for today. See you on the other side when we receive that email link.
Okay.